Chapter 2156. Lin Feng watched from the side. He didn't go near, but he didn't go far either. Although he was the Oriole, Lin Feng wouldn't be so despicable as to take advantage of others. Since that fiery red curly-haired youth was a comrade, if he obtained the meteorite vortex, Lin Feng wouldn't attack. But if he couldn't, then Lin Feng wouldn't be polite. This domain true treasure has such strong flame pressure. Lin Feng was apprehensive. Without a doubt, this was an aura of 100,000 origins. Driven by a pinnacle true treasure, this domain was strong enough to suppress Yao. But it can't suppress me. Lin Feng floated in the air. He wasn't strong, but his realm was high. The suppression of the domain was more on the realm level. Newborn calves aren't afraid of tigers. Their attacks are so sharp. Lin Feng couldn't see the battle in the flame restriction, but he could sense it with his six senses. Yao's strength was weakened by the domain true treasure, but the fiery red curly-haired youth was the opposite. With the help of the domain power, bloodline, and inheritance, he pushed his strength to the threshold of a high-level god. If he was facing another ghost dragon expert, Yao, who was at the threshold of a high-level god, he would have a chance of winning this battle. But he was facing Yao, who was more experienced and shrewd. Plus, he was an ordinary high-level god. Even if he was weakened, he was still barely above the threshold of a high-level god. What he's unleashing isn't his own strength, so the power will be reduced. Plus, the consumption of energy is huge. Whether it's his body or the flame domain, Yao should be able to sense this. Lin Feng could clearly feel that Yao was wearing down the fiery red curly-haired youth's strength at a steady pace. On the other hand, the fiery red curly-haired youth was attacking wave after wave with irresistible force. It wasn't that he didn't know his weakness, but that he had to release the arrow. If he wanted to win, he had to give it his all. Unless he has a trump card to win, this battle is over. With Lin Feng's current vision and experience, he could see through at a glance, and this was what he wanted. If Yao's strength was worn down, his chances of winning would be higher. Time passed by second. Lin Feng looked at the flame domain. It was like a candle, gradually exhausting its energy, and the flames gradually weakened. Before, it was difficult to sense clearly, but now he could clearly sense the aura inside and see the battle. Everything indicated that the fiery-haired young man was already at the end of his tether. It's already very powerful. Lin Feng nodded. Even if it was him, without an avatar, Ku Dun would not be able to do what he did. After continuous battles, Yao was not much better off. As the saying goes, if you keep defending, you are bound to lose. No matter how strong your defense is, there will be a day when it crumbles. He was also injured, and his aura was much weaker than before. However, compared to the fiery red, curly-haired young man, he had retained more of his strength. "Hey, brother, why aren't you helping?" Lin Feng, who was watching the show, couldn't help but be surprised and laugh involuntarily. He didn't expect that the reaction of this young man with fiery red curly hair was so sharp that he was actually able to notice him. As his gaze fell on the flame domain, Lin Feng felt relieved. The domain itself was the best detection method. It seemed that the domain of the fiery red curly-haired young man did not only include Yao in the Sea of Fire, but also the area outside the Sea of Fire. A pinnacle true treasure was indeed extraordinary. "Why should I help you?" Lin Feng found it funny. It's not easy for everyone to come here from Origin Awakened Continent. You help me, I will help you. We will enjoy blessings and endure difficulties together. Quick, brother, I can't hold on for much longer. The fiery red curly-haired young man's voice was panting as he said urgently, "No, I don't need your help." Lin Feng declined. "Don't, brother. Give me face. How about this? I only want one thing to kill this guy, and you can have the rest." The fiery red curly-haired young man was burning with anxiety. Lin Feng smiled. "The meteorite vortex is mine, and you can have the rest." There was a moment of silence. The fiery red curly-haired young man exploded instantly. Obviously, he also knew that his cooperation with Lin Feng had failed. Everyone had come for the meteorite vortex, so he naturally wouldn't give in. Moreover, He didn't expect Lin Feng to be of much help. Although he couldn't sense his aura, he could vaguely guess that Lin Feng was just a low-level god. Even if he had a trump card like him, how strong could he be? Stronger than him? If that was the case, he would have made a move long ago and wouldn't have needed to wait outside to reap the benefits. The fiery red, curly-haired young man didn't take Lin Feng to heart. He only saw him as a choice. He could have such a choice, but if he didn't, it didn't matter. Boom! The fiery red, curly-haired young man's entire body was blazing. He turned into a fireball and threw himself at He Yao. His soaring aura triggered the flame domain, completely overshadowing He Yao's aura and catching him off guard. However, He Yao wasn't easy to deal with. The strength of a high-level god was definitely not undeserved. The tyrannical bloodline of the Ghost Dragon clan and the talent of darkness appeared. He Yao, who'd been hiding his strength, also erupted. Very good. Lin Feng smiled as he watched the tigers fight. What he wanted to see the most was the current situation, forcing He Yao to use all his strength. It was a real fight between the snipe and the clam. Newborn calves weren't afraid of tigers. The fiery red, curly-haired young man's desire to win was very strong. Every punch was futile in an attempt to kill He Yao. He Yao also didn't give way. At this moment, if he still held back his strength, he would really die without a burial place. The Ghost Dragon clan's true body appeared. Relying on the advantage of his physical body and the control of darkness and space, he was evenly matched with the fiery red, curly-haired young man. Boom! 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 Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. It was earth-shattering. In the carefree battle, the strong smell of blood spread in the air. The fiery red, curly-haired young man's eyes were blazing with fighting spirit. He wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. But suddenly, F***CK, I'm not fighting anymore. The fiery red, curly-haired young man shouted. Using the flame domain, his body changed continuously and quickly retreated to the edge. He Yao was slightly startled. In an instant, he glared angrily. His huge dragon body had already soared over. His dragon tail whipped out fiercely like a long whip, causing terrifying spatial tears. Pung! The fiery red, curly-haired young man didn't attack. Instead, he used the inertia of the dragon tail to retreat. In the air, he changed his direction slightly and moved towards Lin Feng. He narrowed his eyes and revealed a sly smile. I'll leave it to you, boss. As his voice fell, the fiery red, curly-haired young man slipped away. At this moment, He Yao's scarlet eyes had already shifted and stared straight at Lin Feng, who was blocking his path. A lowly, elementary deity human. Roar! With irresistible force, his claws slashed through Lin Feng's body. Shua! Lin Feng's afterimages suddenly separated. Suddenly, they appeared behind He Yao. As if overlapping, an extremely powerful force surged out from Lin Feng's body. The white rhinoceros horn pierced through the sky. It was the doppelganger Ku Dun. Boom! Ku Dun heavily slammed into He Yao. Fight! Chapter 2157. What was the strongest thing about the giant rhinoceros clan? The divine light, rhinoceros horn that was bestowed by the heavens. The giant rhinoceros clan was good at defense and had thick skin and flesh, but their speed and attack were a level lower, especially their attack methods, which were very simple and crude. It was a world of difference compared to the Ghost Dragon clan. Under normal circumstances, Ku Dun's attack could not hit He Yao, but it hit the target. The brilliant energy instantly burned and exploded. Ku Dun fully unleashed the power of a high-level god. Although his attack method was simple, it did not mean that his attack power was weak. After all, Ku Dun was also a high-level god, and his physical body was his advantage. He was not inferior to the Ghost Dragon clan. In the God-fallen world, the clans that could squeeze into the top 10 in an area were not that bad. Roar! With a shrill cry, He Yao was sent flying by Ku Dun's attack. Blood splattered everywhere, and dragon scales stuck to his flesh flew everywhere. Even though he had fought with Bailey Jean for so long, he had only suffered light injuries, but this attack was painful and shocking. How could He Yao have imagined that a low-level god could unleash such an attack in an instant? His target was Bailey Jean. He attacked Lin Feng only because Lin Feng was blocking his path. He thought it would be easy, but he did not expect to fall heavily. F***CK. Amazing. Bailey Jean widened his eyes not far away. He was also shocked by the sudden appearance of Ku Dun's clone. He just could not stand Lin Feng sitting on the sidelines and watching the Tigers fight. He was angry and wanted to make Lin Feng suffer, but he did not expect Lin Feng to directly attack He Yao. Now, he was in an awkward situation. At this time, he could not be thick-skinned and interfere, right? Although Bailey Jean was careless, he still had his principles. Lose, lose, lose. Bailey Jean roared in his heart. Suddenly, he frowned again. That's not right. I can't beat that old dragon, even if he loses. Scratching his head, Bailey Jean was a little conflicted. At this time, Lin Feng's attack was completely revealed. Being controlled by Horu Dun's doppelganger and Horu Dun's attacks were completely different. Horu Dun's doppelganger was now a high-level god with top-notch intelligence and consciousness. Although it was only at the threshold of a high-level god, it was close to He Yao's battle prowess when he was injured and consumed a lot of energy. The two beasts fought. They were both creatures of the god-fallen world with powerful bodies. They were truly clashing head-on. One was excellent in both offense and defense, while the other was weak in both offense and defense. Logically speaking, He Yao should have the upper hand, but that was not the case. After Lin Feng infuriated He Yao, he focused on defense. The defense of his doppelganger, Ku Dun, was abnormal. It was enough to reach the limit of a high-level god, and it could even reach the threshold of a top-tier god. Even if He Yao was at his peak state, it would be very difficult for him to deal with Ku Dun, who was one level lower. Not to mention the fact that he was using up a lot of energy. F***CK. This big white bull has such a hard shell. Bailey Jin's eyes widened as he watched Ku Dun move around in a small area. He looked like he was doing it, but he could not escape He Yao's attack. He could not help but mutter, but his movement technique is really bad. Something's wrong. This white yak is doing this on purpose. F***CK. What a shameless white yak, purposely showing flaws to that old dragon. Bailey Jean was not stupid. Although Ku Dun was attacked repeatedly, his aura did not weaken at all. He was not even injured. In an instant, Bailey Jean understood everything. His gaze fell on Lin Feng, who was waiting for an opportunity in the distance. He was envious. Where did this guy catch such a black-bellied white bull? No wonder he's so confident. He actually has such a strong trump card. But just relying on defense is not enough. That old dragon is not stupid. He will naturally run away after exhausting his energy. While muttering, Bailey Jean stared curiously at the battle. He also wanted to see what other moves this young man, who was about his age, had. The fierce battle continued. Both sides were already angry, especially He Yao, who had already recognized Ku Dun. The leader of the giant rhinoceros clan was just a mid-level god who was lucky enough to break through the threshold of a high-level god. How dare he sneak attack him? He couldn't swallow this anger no matter what. On the other hand, He Yao did not even glance at Lin Feng, who was watching the battle from the side. A mere low-level god was just an ant. He could kill him at any time. Continue. Lin Feng's expression was calm. He watched the clone Ku Dun and He Yao fight and did not make any moves. The only thing he could do to He Yao was the Kuan Ling hard arrow. The second level of the Kuan Ling hard arrow could reach the peak of mid-level god with his current combat strength. However, He Yao was a high-level god. If he used it now, it could only cause damage to He Yao and give the clone Ku Dun the upper hand. It was not very meaningful. What he wanted was to hit the target in one hit. The power of the first attack must be the strongest because He Yao could not expect it and could not really defend against it. His momentum was still strong, so it was not the best time to use the Kuan Ling hard arrow. He waited patiently. Lin Feng was like a hunter waiting for the moment his prey revealed a flaw. With every passing moment, the power of the clones Ku Dun and He Yao would weaken a little. Soon, Lin Feng could already feel that He Yao's soul power was gradually weakening. The long battle had consumed a lot of his soul power, and all of it was consuming his soul power. The current He Yao soul power was almost at the mid-level god level. However, it was still not enough. What he wanted was a perfect grasp of the situation. 60%, 70%, 80%. In Lin Feng's heart, the chances of success were constantly increasing. Avatar Ku Dun had taken advantage of Bailey Jean and had taken over He Yao, who had expended a lot of energy. Now both sides were heavily injured and had gone all out. 90%. It's done. Lin Feng's eyes were shining. He could not wait for 100% because He Yao would escape before then. After spending so much effort, he would certainly not let this happen. A 90% chance was enough. Kuan Ling Heart Arrow, second level. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and his soul power condensed in an instant. Seizing the moment when the clone Ku Dun and He Yao were fighting fiercely, two pure soul arrows shot out and merged into one in the air. With a whoosh, they shot directly into He Yao's sea of consciousness. Bang! He Yao, who was furiously attacking, suddenly felt his head explode like a bomb. Incomparable pain assaulted him, instantly drowning him. In the next moment, the clone Ku Dun gathered all his power, and the god spirit light, rhinoceros horn, heavily hit He Yao's vital point. Swoosh! It was a direct hit, and blood spurted wildly. What a strong will, as expected of the powerful life form of the god-fallen world. Lin Feng felt He Yao's struggle, but he would not give him any more chances. With a 90% chance of success, it was basically impossible for him to make any mistakes. Swoosh! The second Kuan Ling Heart Arrow was shot out. It was like the last straw that broke the camel's back, destroying He Yao's remaining consciousness and truly annihilating him. The dragon body trembled, and in an instant, it fell to the ground with a bang. He Yao was dead. Chapter 2158. F***CK. He's really dead. Bailey Jin's eyes widened. Originally, he had only wanted to teach this young man who stood by and watched with folded arms. Unexpectedly, he had actually killed He Yao. That was a high-level god of the Nether Dragon race. Previously, he had expended a tremendous amount of effort, but was still unable to take down a superpower house. Now, this young man had easily killed him with just a few moves. It was too shocking. From Bailey Jin's point of view, Lin Feng had indeed only used a few moves because the one who had attacked from head to toe was the black-bellied big white bull. However, he also knew that the real fatal attack was the soul attack launched by this inconspicuous young man. Such a strong soul power, no wonder he could subdue this big white bull. Cunning, despicable, birds of a feather flock together. Bailey Jean muttered. Although he was unwilling, he could only accept reality helplessly. He wouldn't do something as shameless as killing others and snatching their treasures. Moreover, facing this black-bellied big white bull and this human youth who was proficient in the Tao of Souls, Bailey Jean himself was not confident. His pinnacle true treasure was strong, and his flame domain was tyrannical, but it was useless against soul attacks. A soul attack that could kill He Yao was at least the power of a mid-level god. This brother is really too shameless. This was Bailey Jin's final evaluation of Lin Feng. He clearly had such strong strength, but he had to watch the show from the side and wait until he and He Yao had exhausted most of their strength before attacking. My last meteorite vortex. Bailey Jean cried in his heart. Reincarnation of destiny. Pa! A light flashed in Lin Feng's hand, and he revealed a smile. It was the meteorite vortex. The Nether Dragon race really gave this meteorite vortex to He Yao. Lin Feng put away the meteorite vortex, feeling satisfied. With this meteorite vortex, he was qualified to participate in the turbulent void and even the final secret of the entire wandering planet. Although he didn't know what it was, it must be something good since everyone was fighting for it. Otherwise, why would the other experts be looking for something to do? However, since there are top-level God Realm experts in the God-Fallen world, why didn't they attack? In fact, I haven't even seen a single one. Lin Feng had always had doubts in his heart. With the strength of top-notch Divine Spirit Realm experts, it would be easy for them to obtain the meteorite vortex, so why didn't they make a move? 1 or 2 meteorite vortexes were still acceptable, but 8 meteorite vortexes had been unearthed, yet not a single top-notch deity stage expert had appeared. This was a little strange. If not for his avatar Ku Dun, he might not have known that the God-fallen world had a top-tier God-spirit realm expert. However, they did exist. A group of super experts who truly stood at the top of the wandering planets. Bailey Jean, Lin Feng shouted. In the distance, a young man with fiery red curly hair was mumbling. When he heard the voice, he responded reflexively, "Here, these are for you." Lin Feng pointed at He Yao's corpse. "Oh," the red-haired youth nodded. The figure of the young man with fiery red curly hair flashed, and he instantly arrived in front of Lin Feng. He asked in surprise, "Brother, you know me? The new superstar who opened the great inheritance of Heaven's Road? You're so famous. Who doesn't know you?" Lin Feng said with a smile. The young man with fiery red curly hair, Bailey Jean, straightened his spine when he heard this. He chuckled and said proudly, "Of course. Who doesn't know my name now? I've won successive battles and have never tasted defeat. Many God-spirit realm experts have died at my hands." As he spoke, he waved his fists. Flames appeared everywhere, and he looked like a ferocious, flaming tiger. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. This Bailey Jean was very friendly. He said casually, "It's all thanks to your help that I killed He Yao. I don't like to owe people favors. As I said before, I'll only take the meteorite vortexes. The rest is all yours." That was the Dark Dragon race. The corpse of a high-level God-spirit realm expert was extremely precious. Its value was probably higher than a few outstanding supreme treasures. However, it wasn't of much use to Lin Feng now. If Bailey Jean hadn't exhausted He Yao's strength first, he might have been able to win, but the price might be much higher. There was also a high possibility that He Yao would escape. Of course, the worst possibility was that he would be defeated by He Yao. Everything was unknown, but now he had won. After successfully taking the meteorite vortexes, he should at least give them some soup. "Brother, you're really generous. This is the corpse of a high-level God-spirit realm expert. It's worth at least 2 outstanding supreme treasures." Bailey Jean circled around He Yao's corpse, his eyes shining. The soul was killed, and the corpse is intact. It's probably worth 3 outstanding supreme treasures. Lin Feng smiled. It didn't matter if it was worth 1 pinnacle supreme treasure. "You deserve it," Lin Feng said to Bailey Jean. "All right, let's part ways here. We'll meet again if fate wills it." "Hey, brother, wait!" Bailey Jean hurriedly shouted. Lin Feng stopped. "Is there anything else?" "Well," Bailey Jean chuckled and said shamelessly, "Brother, are you selling this meteorite vortexes? I'll trade 5 outstanding supreme treasures with you." Lin Feng pointed at He Yao's corpse. Bailey Jean was also thick-skinned. He knew what Lin Feng meant. Then 7 outstanding supreme treasures. Seeing Lin Feng's indifferent expression, Bailey Jean gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. "Damn, a pinnacle supreme treasure. Bro, this is all I have. A pinnacle supreme treasure in exchange for the meteorite vortexes. You've made a fortune." Lin Feng smiled. "Is there anything else?" Bailey Jin's solemn face instantly relaxed. He said with a bitter face, "Brother, is there no room for negotiation?" Lin Feng said, "I only have 1 meteorite vortexes. Naturally, I can't give it to you." Bailey Jean let out a long sigh, his face full of despair. "The 18 meteorite vortexes are gone, all gone. 1 from the Emperor Star Tower, 1 from the Milky Way's human tribe, 1 from the Void Dragon tribe, 1 from the Azure Dragon King." Bailey Jean kept muttering to himself. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. Lin Feng looked at Bailey Jean. He could see that he was very disappointed. Just as he was about to comfort him, his heart suddenly skipped a beat. His eyes flashed. "The Void Dragon tribe has 1 meteorite vortexes. Doesn't that mean it's on Dragon Emperor Jiankong? 4 years ago, Dragon Emperor Jiankong died in his hands. However, he was busy practicing his saber techniques that day and did not check his storage ring carefully." Whoosh, immersing his consciousness, Lin Feng directly broke through the remaining thin layer of defense and quickly scanned it. Soon, he saw an extremely familiar treasure. It was exactly the same as the meteorite vortexes he had just obtained. 2 Lin Feng could not help but laugh. There was not one before, but now there were two. It was really a pleasant surprise. Brother Bailey, do you know some secrets about the meteorite vortexes? Lin Feng looked at Bailey Jean. He could tell a lot from his expression. It did not look like he had just lost a treasure. Combined with the fact that he had once opened a heavenly road and obtained an inheritance, there might be some secrets that he did not know. Chapter 2159. Bailey Jean snorted. So what if it is? Why should I tell you? Brother, don't take it for granted. Lin Feng smiled. If you tell me, maybe I'll consider selling the meteorite vortex to you. What? Bailey, she suddenly jumped up, his eyes wide open. Are you serious, brother? He shook his head and looked at Lin Feng suspiciously. Impossible. If I tell you the secret and you sell the meteorite vortex to me, what benefits will you get? That's contradictory. Bailey Jean was not stupid to be able to open the heavenly road's forbidden land inheritance. Lin Feng also knew, so he did not intend to hide it from him. A light flashed in his hand, and two identical meteorite vortexes appeared. The light flashed, causing Bailey Jean to almost stop breathing. He was dumbfounded. Tutu swoosh. The light flashed, and Lin Feng put away the two meteorite vortexes. F*CK. Brother, you're too abnormal. A group of high-level God stage powerhouses fought to the death and couldn't even get one. You, a low-level God stage powerhouse, have two meteorite vortexes. Bailey Jin's eyes were filled with envy. It was luck, Lin Feng said modestly. He did not know that Dragon Emperor Jiao Kong had one. Hee, brother, do you still mean what you said just now? Bailey Jin's expression changed very quickly, and he instantly revealed a flattering expression. He approached Lin Feng and smiled. That depends on how trustworthy and useful your secret is, Lin Feng said noncommittally. Bailey Jean raised his eyebrows and said, Don't worry, brother. I'll make sure you're satisfied. I dare say that in the entire turbulent void, those who know more about the meteorite vortex than me, at most, two hands, no, one hand. Oh, is that so? Lin Feng said. Bailey Jean nodded repeatedly. This meteorite vortex is related to a big secret of the wandering planet. By the way, brother, you know about the wandering planet, right? Yes. Amazing, brother. I only knew about it after receiving the inheritance. Bailey Jean continued to talk. Lin Feng listened carefully. Some of them were things that he knew. For example, there were a total of 18 meteorite vortexes, and one would appear in every small reincarnation cycle. At the end of the 10 small reincarnations, 8 meteorite vortexes would appear in the big reincarnation cycle, for a total of 18. However, he didn't know most of the information about the meteorite vortex. Lin Feng asked in surprise, The next time the anomaly appears will be when we use the vortex of meteorites and enter the heavenly fate reincarnation? That's right, the cycle of destiny. Bailey, she said, it's right at the center of the God-fallen world. The meteorite vortex is the key. All elites below the level of top-tier gods can use the meteorite vortex to participate in the heavenly fate reincarnation. Realization dawned on Lin Feng. That is to say, top-tier deities can directly participate in the cycle of reincarnation. Bailey, she said, that's right. I'm not sure about the specifics of the heavenly fate reincarnation, but according to the information from the inheritance, countless universe deity great beings would flock over, wanting to participate in the heavenly fate reincarnation. They would have no choice but to find a stray planet, and the chances of that are as small as cosmic dust. Lin Feng nodded. The universe was so vast, and stray planets were constantly wandering. Without a definite target, it was extremely difficult to find one. For even universe deities to covet it, the heavenly fate reincarnation must be extraordinary. Lin Feng nodded inwardly. The universe was so vast, and there were countless opportunities. However, it seems that no one has been able to completely break through the heavenly fate reincarnation, Bailey Jean added. So, the heavenly fate reincarnation still exists. No one has ever broken through. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. Bailey Jean nodded. Some failed and died. Some failed and were sent away from the stray planets. Some went missing. Anyway, That's how the news spread. Every stray planet has its own heavenly fate reincarnation, waiting for the only one who can break through the heavenly fate reincarnation, the chosen one. The only one. Lin Feng exhaled softly, his expression solemn. This opportunity was probably greater than he had imagined. Stray planets had existed for countless years, and the heavenly fate reincarnation had appeared countless times. Thousands, tens of thousands, or even more, but no one had truly broken through the heavenly fate reincarnation. Interesting. Lin Feng smiled. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and he was full of enthusiasm. This kind of challenge made one's blood boil the most. How long until the next phenomenon appears? Lin Feng asked. About the same time as the meteorite vortex, Bailey Jean answered. Lin Feng nodded. In other words, 500 to 800 years. It would take too long to return to the giant Rhino Valley. After all, he still had to hurry and get close to the center of the God-fallen world. It was better to go directly. In any case, he was more focused on refining the godlight rhino horn and the supreme blood-devouring horn to hone his saber techniques. He did not necessarily need a quiet place to cultivate. It might be better to hone his combat strength before the heavenly fate reincarnation began. Brother, how about these secrets? I've already told you everything. Bailey Jean looked at Lin Feng eagerly, his face full of desire. Lin Feng said, "Give me the pinnacle true treasure." Whoosh! Bailey Jean's eyes lit up. In an instant, a pitch-black pyramid-shaped strange object appeared in his hand. Darkness-type pinnacle true treasure. I obtained this by chance in the forbidden land of Heaven Road. Meteorite vortex. Lin Feng did not hesitate to trade with Bailey Jean. Even if it was other pinnacle true treasures, he would trade. After all, he had promised Bailey Jean before. Darkness-type pinnacle true treasure was even better. There was no time now. Lin Feng put away the pinnacle true treasure and said to Bailey Jean, "More people, more companions. Let's go to the center of the God-fallen world together." "Okay, brother." Bailey Jean was overjoyed. He hid the meteorite vortex with a happy expression. This feeling of regaining what he had lost was simply too great for him. Although he had lost a pinnacle true treasure, it was not of much help to Bailey Jean. So be it. The meteorite vortex only appeared once in 100 reincarnations. It was the key to the reincarnation of destiny. Since the heavens allowed me to open the inheritance of the forbidden land of Heaven Road and let me obtain the meteorite vortex by chance, there must be some kind of arrangement. I must be destined to be the only person this wandering planet is waiting for. Bailey Jin's eyes were full of fighting spirit. Lin Feng saw this and could guess what he was thinking. He did not care. What was his would always be his. The battle for the reincarnation of destiny was bound to be very intense. His strength was still not enough, especially when compared to those high-level God Spirit experts or even top-tier God Spirit experts. Pulling Bailey Jean along could be considered a kindred spirit. Moreover, he obviously knew much more about the reincarnation of destiny than he did. With him as a companion, all aspects would be balanced. The reincarnation of destiny is waiting for the only one. Lin Feng looked into the distance, his eyes deep. Everyone wished that they were the true prodigy of the heavens. He was no exception. Chapter 2160. In the northern region of the God-fallen world, the land of white snow, countless snowflakes fell, but they could not get close to the man in the black robe. Shocking dark energy appeared around him, and a suffocating aura condensed in the air. Black crystals floated in the air, forming a thin shield. In front of him, there was a blood-red figure. She had a devilish figure and a beautiful face, but her aura was extremely weak. Poison Rose. She had been injured, but her breathing had calmed down. Opening her eyes weakly, Poison Rose looked at the black-robed man who had exhausted a lot of energy and whose face was a little pale. Her gaze was a little complicated. "Thank you. You don't have to be so formal with me," the man in the black robe said. His voice was hoarse, as if he had used up a lot of energy. Raising his head, there was a faint scar on his face. His nose bridge was extremely high, like an eagle's. His eyes faintly emitted a murderous aura, but it was accumulated over many years. This was the legendary figure of Origin Awakened Continent, the top assassin, Thorn. Poison Rose laughed dryly and stopped looking at Thorn. Poison Rose did not know how to face this man who had always been devoted to her. Even when she formed the deadly extreme to compete with Thorn, Thorn was not angry at her at all. He even showed mercy. "Who hurt you?" Thorn asked coldly. Poison Rose hesitated and said, "Demonic Blade King. I have heard of him." Thorn nodded, and his voice suddenly turned cold. "Who dares to touch my woman? You are courting death." His eyes were filled with murderous aura, which made people shudder. Those who were familiar with Thorn knew that he was really angry. Poison Rose saw this and felt warmth in her heart. She knew Thorn's personality. He would definitely kill Demonic Blade King to avenge her. She also knew Thorn's feelings for her, but she could not accept it. In the end, they had different goals. "Take this." Taking off the pinnacle true treasure bracelet on her left hand, Poison Rose handed it to Thorn. Thorn was stunned and did not take it. He just looked at her. Dragon Emperor Jiankong is dead, and the meteorite vortex is in the hands of Demonic Blade King. I have nothing more to ask for. Moreover, I've also thought it through. With my current strength, even if I have the meteorite vortex, it might not be a good thing. I might as well go back and be the leader of Fatal Limit. This universe-hallowed rings was obtained by both of us back then. However, a pinnacle true treasure has been split into two, and only 1/10 of its power is left. Today, I return it to you in perfect condition. I believe that you will definitely be able to restore it to its former glory. Consider it as repaying you for saving my life." Poison Rose said, but she did not dare to look at Thorn. Suddenly, the Heaven and Earth Halcyon ring was taken away. Poison Rose's heart felt empty. She didn't know if she was disappointed or upset. She couldn't describe the feeling. Heaven and Earth harmony, its power is astonishing. "See, I picked up the Heaven and Earth halos," his gaze cold. "Now we need it. Rose, I will accept your kind intentions. When I return from the center of the God-fallen world, I will give you all of these universe halos." The center of the God-fallen world? Poison Rose was stunned. "You have a meteorite whirlpool?" Thorn smiled faintly. "Have you forgotten who I am?" Poison Rose was slightly taken aback when she heard this. Then she smiled bitterly. Yes, how could she forget? The man in front of her was the #1 assassin in Origin Awakened Continent. He had never failed to get what he wanted. The corpses of the people he wanted to kill had already turned cold. God-fallen world, southern region. Lin Feng and Bailey Jean traveled together. They could take care of each other. They both came from Origin Awakened Continent and were close in age, so it was easy for them to get along. Most importantly, they recognized each other's strength. This was the most important thing. If their strengths were not equal, it would be difficult for them to work together. "You mean he will seek revenge on me?" Lin Feng said in surprise. "Brother, don't you know that the ghost dragon race has a strong sense of aura?" Bailey Jean looked at Lin Feng. "Your body is stained with He Yao's blood and aura. It won't disappear in a short time. Once you get close, he will easily catch you." Lin Feng nodded. Swayer smiled and said, "He can't even protect himself now, right?" Bailey Jean shrugged. "I'm not sure, but an expert like him has the geographical advantage. Unless a top God Spirit expert comes, other experts of the same level may be able to defeat him, but it will be difficult to kill him. Once Yao dies, he will definitely sense it. When the time comes, he will not continue to fight and will force his way out." Lin Feng nodded. If a high-level God Spirit wanted to break through, other experts would find it difficult to stop him, especially since the Ghost Dragon race was proficient in the Tao of Space. He also knew that after killing He Yao and taking the meteorite vortex, he would definitely head to the center of God-fallen world and participate in the cycle of destiny. Looking at Bailey Jean and seeing his expression, Lin Feng suddenly understood and laughed. F***CK. Bailey Jean glanced at Lin Feng and pouted, his expression indignant. "Don't worry, Brother Bailey. I'll take responsibility for what I did. Since I killed Yao, I won't let you take the blame," Lin Feng said. "If I encounter He, I will take responsibility. His body was stained with Yao's blood, but so was Bailey Jean. Therefore, even though Bailey Jean was not the one who killed Yao, if he wanted revenge, Bailey Jean would definitely be included. Simply put, he was an undeserved disaster. Do you think that old dragon will reason with you? Bailey Jean said. Even if he's not the murderer, he's at least an accomplice. I won't be able to wash away this crime anyway, sigh. Although Bailey Jean sighed, his expression was one of indifference. It was obvious that he was very confident. Even if he was not He's match, he was very confident that he could keep his life. The limit of a high-level god's spirit. Lin Feng knew He's strength very well. He was an entire level stronger than Yao. Even if he joined forces with Bailey Jean now, they would probably not be his match. However, it was not difficult for him to keep his life. With Ku Dun's clone holding him back, it would be more than enough for him to escape with his movement technique and double light speed. Another enemy. Lin Feng smiled. He had gained a lot along the way, but he had also made a lot of enemies. First, it was the Destiny race, then Fatal Limit, the Void Dragon race, the Blood-Devouring Beast race, and now there was the Ghost Dragon race. But it did not matter. Since I can eliminate the Void Dragon race and Fatal Limit, I can also eliminate the Blood-Devouring Beast race and the Ghost Dragon race in the future. Lin Feng was full of confidence. Now, his main body's combat strength had barely reached the threshold of a mid-level god spirit. While refining the Blood-Devouring Horn and Divine Spirit Light, Rhinoceros Horn, he honed his saber technique and movement technique in actual combat, while pondering the third level of the Kuan-Ling Hard Arrow. Although this was the innate ability of the Kuan-Ling race, his soul was quite strong. It was not difficult to cultivate it, and he could unleash a lot of power. If I can upgrade Kuan-Ling's Heart Arrow to the third stage before the Heavenly Fate reincarnation appears, my combat power will be enough to reach the threshold of a high-level deity. With the help of my doppelganger Ku Dun, I'll be able to defeat ordinary high-level deities and compete with peak high-level deities. Chapter 2161. In the Destiny Realm, far away from the chaotic void space. In the Destiny-defying palace, a giant purple-red destiny, I landed in the center of the palace. It was ancient and majestic. This was the core area of the Destiny race, and it hid a big secret of the Destiny race. Rumble, the purple-red eye of Destiny, shook violently, and the entire Destiny world shook as if something big was about to happen. The giant Destiny eye that had been hidden in the sky above the Destiny realm gradually dimmed and became transparent. Sizzle, sizzle. The spatial rift opened up, and then a violet-red figure appeared. It was a face that was handsome to the point it didn't seem human, and it carried an indescribably evil aura. His 3 eyes were bright and pure white, and the third eye was especially translucent like crystal and unfathomable. Compared to the Destiny eye of an ordinary god-grade expert, it was not only much bigger, but its aura was also much stronger. Behind him was a Destiny race expert dressed in monk robes. A skeleton chain hung around his neck, and his hands were clasped together in a respectful manner. Wu Yuelong greets the king. In the Destiny-defying palace, Wu Yuelong, who was ranked 30th on the Origin Awakening list, knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. Rise! The evil voice sounded, and the handsome man smiled. With a hook of his finger, an invisible force lifted Wu Yuelong up. His strength was unfathomable. Congratulations on coming out of seclusion, king. Wu Yuelong made a pleased gesture and sent the handsome man to the Witch King's throne that had been empty for a long time. The handsome man clasped his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. Tell me everything that happened recently. Yes, king. Wu Yuelong bowed and said. After a long time, so many died? The handsome man supported his chin with one hand, seemingly unhappy. Wu Yuelong gritted her teeth. It's all because of that demonic blade, King Lin Feng. The handsome man glanced at Wu Yuelong and said indifferently, It's no one's fault if you're not strong enough. You relied too much on the spiritual shock of death and ignored your own talents. The Destiny race is the orthodox race of the Origin Awakening continent and has existed since the Origin Awakening continent. Generation after generation, we have prospered and prospered to this day. The reincarnation of the heavens exists for us, because we are the ones who are truly destined for the heavens. Your Majesty is right, Wu Welong said. The handsome man closed his eyes and waved his hand, indicating for Wu Welong to leave. The latter bowed and left. Only the handsome man and the Destiny Race expert were left in the hall. "Shall we depart now, my king?" asked the Destiny Race expert in monk robes. "There's no rush. There's still a long way to go before the cycle of reincarnation." The handsome man said indifferently, "Meng Tai, make a trip to Origin Awakened Continent. After leaving for so long, I'm afraid no one remembers me. Wu Hao, it's time. It's time to rebuild the reputation of the Destiny Race." "Yes, Your Majesty." Meng Tai, the Destiny Race's expert in monk robes, cupped his hands and said. The skeleton chain around his neck made clanking sounds. "God-fallen world, southern region. Brother, where's your big white bull? Let's take it out for a walk. I haven't seen that big white bull in a long time. Why don't we call it out for a spar?" "Brother, don't pretend to be cool. It's boring to travel. Let's talk. I still don't know your name." "That's not fair. You already know my name." Along the way, Bailey Jin's voice was heard. This guy was a chatterbox who was very talkative. However, because of this, the journey was not so boring. He was talkative and strong. "F***CK, you're just a mid-level deity. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me?" Bailey Jin's body was burning. His iron fist wrapped in flames directly pierced through the head of a giant black-hooved tiger. Blood splattered everywhere. Lin Feng watched quietly from the side. This giant black-hooved tiger's strength was above his. He was no match for it in close combat. However, if he used the Kuan Ling hard arrow, it would be too easy to win, so it was meaningless. With Bailey Jin's strength, anyone below the high-level deity level is no threat to him. He can even kill a high-level deity level expert if he unleashes his full strength. Not bad. Lin Feng had a very high opinion of Bailey Jin. The inheritance he obtained from the Heavenly Road might be stronger than Yin Fagia, who was at the top of the Origin Awakening list. After all, the inheritance Yin Fagia obtained from the Heavenly Road was only in a small reincarnation, but Bailey Jin obtained it in a large reincarnation. In terms of the quality of the inheritance, his myriad heaven Dao naturally left them far behind. However, the gap could not be widened at the moment. It was like two sets of saber moves. One set only had 5 moves. It was easy to cultivate, but its power was ordinary. The other set had 50 moves. It was difficult to cultivate, but its power was powerful. Bailey Jin cultivated the first set of saber moves. He had already cultivated to the 4th and 5th moves. On the other hand, he cultivated the second set of saber techniques. He had only cultivated to the 1st and 2nd moves. However, the upper limit of the Heavenly Road's inheritance is a peak deity level expert at most. Lin Feng now knew very well who left behind the Heavenly Road's inheritance. Those experts who were preparing to challenge the reincarnation of destiny. Some are high-level deity-level experts, and some are top-notch deity-level experts. The strongest was only a peak deity-level expert. It was impossible for them to surpass a deity-level expert because the reincarnation of destiny did not allow it. "How is it, brother? Aren't I powerful?" Bailey Jin appeared in front of Lin Feng, waved his fist, and chuckled. "Powerful," Lin Feng praised. "If you have a pair of peak true treasure boxing gloves, your attack power will increase by a lot." Bailey Jin sighed softly. "There's nothing I can do. Although the senior who left the inheritance has boxing gloves, he needs to use them himself. He only left a useless dark peak true treasure for me. By the way, brother, why aren't you compatible yet?" "There's no hurry." Lin Feng smiled. He could not tell Bailey Jin that he was refining the divine light rhinoceros horn. He was afraid that the two would conflict. "Oh, hurry up and integrate it and increase your strength." Bailey Jin raised his eyebrows. "You're dragging me down now." Lin Feng could not help but laugh. "Yes, yes." Bailey Jin's expression suddenly became serious. "To be honest, brother, participating in the reincarnation of destiny tests the strength of every expert. Your big white bull might not be of any use. Lin Feng was deep in thought. Even so, Ku Dun was his clone, so it should be different. When the time comes, we'll help each other. Brother, the two of us are probably the weakest among all participating in the reincarnation of destiny, Bailey Jean said. There's only one reincarnation of destiny. Aren't you afraid that I'll fight with you? Bailey Jean curled his lips. Fight for nothing. Since the birth of the wandering planet, there have been thousands of reincarnations of destiny, and no warrior has ever passed. Brother, if you can pass, I'll accept it. I know my limits. I'll pass as much as I can and earn as much as I can. Lin Feng nodded. Indeed, many top-notch deity-level experts and even peak deity-level experts had participated in the reincarnation of destiny, but none had passed. One could imagine how difficult the reincarnation of destiny was. No matter how talented one was, it was difficult to be confident. This was a true heavenly moat. Chapter 2162. Wu Hao had reappeared in the Origin Awakened continent. The fear brought by the Destiny race experts descended once again. In just a few years, it caused a huge earthquake in the Origin Awakened continent. Countless experts were slaughtered. 7, 8, and even 9-star experts were killed. It was a bald man in monk robes with a skeleton chain around his neck. He killed experts without any fear, causing the entire Origin Awakened continent to panic. The experts of the Winged Men clan, Chan Demon clan, King's Arena, Samsara, and many other forces were killed. Even the 9-star experts were no exception. Wen Yin, F.A. Suishin, who was in the top 10 of the Origin Awakened list, died at the hands of the bald man. The Origin Awakened continent fell into deep fear. Who else could kill this demon? No one. At the very least, it was impossible for there to be any before the turbulent void closed. Because the bald man, Meng Tai, who was called Venerable by the Destiny race, was a mid-level God Realm expert. On the Origin Awakened list, other than Yin Fagia, there were only 2 mid-level God Realm experts, Thorn and the Azure Dragon King. Right now, they were all in the God-fallen world. 100 years flew by. After the light speed, light brilliance, and light Dao, Lin Feng had also reached the Origin realm, the light Dao. This Dao was a great improvement for Lin Feng. It was not an improvement in the light Dao itself, but a leap in the level of life. After comprehending 100,000 Origin realm experts consecutively, although Lin Feng's bloodline did not change, his life level had already undergone a brand new transformation. He had entered the high-level God realm from a mid-level God realm expert. The improvement of the foundation had a huge improvement in all aspects, including combat strength. This was the most direct improvement. At the same time, there was also room for improvement, such as comprehension, physical strength, and so on. I'm sorry, Brother Bailey. I'm afraid I'll have to go into seclusion for a while, Lin Feng said. Plans could not keep up with changes. He had originally planned to enter the central area of the God-fallen world first and seize a good position, but compared to that, consolidating and improving his strength was a higher priority. It's a small matter. We have plenty of time. There's no hurry, Bailey Jean said happily. Congratulations, brother. Your strength has increased by 1 level. Have you reached the life level of a mid-level God Realm expert now? Lin Feng shook his head. Bailey Jean stared and said after a while, Brother, you're only a low-level God Realm expert now. No, I haven't reached the level of a deity. Lin Feng said and smiled at the dumbfounded Bailey Jean. The environment here is not bad. Let's go into seclusion here for the time being. If Brother Bailey has something to do, you can leave first. After saying that, Lin Feng drew a circle on the ground and directly entered a state of cultivation. He hasn't even reached the level of a god yet. Bailey Jean was greatly shocked. He looked at Lin Feng as if he was suffocating and could not calm down for a long time. The shock this brother had brought him was too great. He had thought that he was God's favored one, and that his life rating as a low-level god was already comparable to that of a high-level god. However, compared to Lin Feng, he truly paled in comparison. The difference was too great. Master is right. Indeed, there is always someone better than you out there. Bailey Jean sighed deeply as he gazed at Lin Feng, who was in closed-door cultivation, and he couldn't conceal his shock. Where did this fellow come from? Lin Feng didn't hide it from Bailey Jean. After all, he had already treated him as a friend after spending so much time together. There was no deceit between friends. Moreover, the life rating itself could only be used as a reference. What was truly important was strength, the most essential combat power. On the battlefield, what mattered in a duel was not how strong one's potential was, but how hard one's fist was. Lin Feng knew this very well. Therefore, he would rather enter the center of the God-fallen world later to increase his strength. Lin Feng did not fall behind in absorbing the fruits of heaven and earth, comprehending the world, his saber techniques, and his realm. He increased his strength in all aspects. He had accumulated many fruits of heaven and earth before, and had obtained quite a lot from sweeping through the territories of the two races. It was just the right time to use them. My soul has also become stronger. Not only is it easier to comprehend the third level of the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow, but the power of the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow has also increased by a lot. Lin Feng was very satisfied. Now that he was facing Hiao again, he could easily defeat him even if he was in perfect condition. This was because his second level of the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow had already reached the attack strength of a high-level god. If I can cultivate it to the third level, it will be enough to fight against a peak high-level god. His comprehension of the saber technique realm had also increased. He was more and more familiar with the boundless weight and the Mandarin duck tie. However, this was different from the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow, which directly improved his soul. Saber techniques still relied more on practice and actual combat. He had improved in all aspects. In less than 100 years, Lin Feng's close combat ability had increased to the level of a mid-level god. It's time to merge with it. He felt the call of the pyramid-shaped pinnacle true treasure. His bloodline had merged, and part of the 100,000 origin realm had also merged. This pinnacle true treasure's aura was very powerful. A pinnacle true treasure could greatly increase a god's strength. Especially now, he did not have even one. No matter how strong the Wings of Warmth was, it was only close to a pinnacle true treasure, and it was of the spatial type. It was still useful against ordinary gods and low-level gods, but against high-level gods like Yao, its effect was much weaker. In the upcoming cycle of destiny, he would not only have to face high-level gods, but also top-level gods. The effect of a pinnacle true treasure would be highlighted. Lin Feng instantly merged with it, and his heart moved. The dark pyramid opened up like a model, and pure, dark energy gushed into his heart. At the same time, it brought with it endless information. This was a pinnacle true treasure that combined control and support. It contained the Tao of Law of Darkness and Dark Matter, which complemented each other. Prison Fiend Palace. Basic ability, Flight. It can be hidden in Prison Fiend Palace and driven by the Tao of Dark Matter. Its flight path is difficult to predict, and its defense is extremely high. This was a natural fortress that could be big or small. It contained the Tao of Dark Matter, so it was naturally good at flight. After all, the Tao of Dark Matter and the Tao of Light were the two fastest great Tao laws. It's a pinnacle true treasure. High-level gods can hardly destroy it. Even top-level gods have to spend a lot of effort to destroy it. It's very safe to stay in Prison Fiend Palace, but there's also a certain risk. If the enemy has a treasure to trap me, it'll be troublesome. Lin Feng knew his advantages and disadvantages. But no matter what, it was only a basic ability, and it was already very good. Ordinary true treasures had 3 abilities, which were the basic ability, the advanced ability, and the ultimate ability. The power and effect increased progressively. The advanced ability of Prison Fiend Palace was useful for him now. The requirement is the Way of Dark Matter and 100,000 Origin Realm cultivators. Lin Feng smiled. He had 3 great Daos of Darkness that had reached 100,000 Origin Realm. They were Dark Demon, Annihilation, and Dark Matter. Chapter 2163. Advanced Ability, Hell Fiend Cage. A rare support-type secret technique of the Way of Dark Matter. Some 100,000 Origins secret techniques could not be used by oneself, but they could be used with the help of treasures. Hellfiend Cage was one of them. Once used, Hellfiend Hall would disperse and condense dark matter to block the space. It did not seem very useful, but it was very targeted. It was specifically targeted at experts skilled in the way of space. What did the way of space use? Space. Without space, the way of space would be greatly reduced. Hellfiend Cage seemed to harm others without benefit, but it was actually a powerful medicine against experts skilled in the laws of space, restricting their best moves. Of course, it also had the effect of slowing down the enemy's escape, but compared to weakening the laws of space, it was not as effective. Ultimate ability, Hellfiend Land. Driven by the way of darkness, it turns into an endless hell where hell fiends run rampant. Lin Feng received a huge amount of information, including the introduction, usage, cultivation, and so on. The strength of the ultimate ability and the domain of a peak true treasure was simply terrifying. It's much stronger than Bailey Jin's Sea of Fire domain. In terms of pinnacle true treasures, his Prison Fiend Hall and Bailey Jin's Blazing Divine Lotus were of similar quality. However, the Land of Prison Fiend was an ultimate ability, while Bailey Jin's Flame domain was merely an advanced ability. However, the requirements are higher. Lin Feng pursed his lips. Hellfiend Cage only required the way of dark matter to be at least 100,000 Origin Realm experts. Hellfiend Land required both the way of dark matter and the way of darkness to be at least 100,000 Origin Realm experts. There was no way of darkness among the way of darkness that he had grasped. Even the remaining Sovereign Blood, Main Horn, did not contain the way of darkness. It's a little troublesome to cultivate Hellfiend Land. It's very unlikely for now. Lin Feng knew very well that although there were 100,000 Origin Realm experts everywhere, it was because of the Sovereign Blood Main Horn and the Divine Light Rhinoceros Horn. If he really relied on his own comprehension, it would take him tens of thousands of years to comprehend each law. He did not have that much time. Mastering the basic and advanced abilities is enough for my strength to increase greatly. Lin Feng wasn't greedy. He could use both abilities. On this wandering planet where the space element was extremely active, it was a fact that his space ability was inferior to the other powerhouses. Since he cannot catch up, he might as well restrain the other party and let both sides suffer. Boom, boom, boom. The meteorite fell straight down from the sky. The countless meteorites in the God-fallen world were densely packed and terrifying. They would fall from time to time. Lin Feng and Bailey Jin were immersed in their cultivation and did not care at all. This was because there was a big white bull supporting them. The high-level god's clone, Horo Dun, was guarding Lin Feng. Therefore, Lin Feng didn't need to purposely search for territory. He could train anywhere. In the God-fallen world, there were actually no cultivation treasures. This was because every place was a cultivation treasures land. The energy here was dense and rich, and it was blessed by the heavens. All powerhouses, no matter which great Tao they cultivated, could rapidly improve in the God-fallen world. Therefore, although there were few powerhouses in the God-fallen world, compared to the turbulent void, there were much more top powerhouses. 100 years, another 100 years. Bailey Jin, who was stimulated by Lin Feng, also seized the time to cultivate. Just as Lin Feng had guessed, the inheritance he obtained was quite good. It was much better than Yin Fa Jie's inheritance. Back then, Yin Fa Jie's inheritance was only at the high-level god level. However, Bailey Jin's inheritance was directly at the peak god level. It was a difference of 2 levels. In addition to the energy stored in the inheritance and the treasures left behind, Bailey Jin was able to quickly break through in a short period of time. His bloodline was compatible, and he became a dragon among men. I can't lose. Although Bailey Jin looked unrestrained, he was still quite stubborn about his strength. He treated Lin Feng as a friend and also a competitor. Before the cycle of reincarnation, my combat strength must be comparable to a high-level god's limit. I must. Bailey Jin gritted his teeth. The urgent desire for strength made his fighting spirit burn. It would be a lie to say that he had no ambition for the cycle of reincarnation. If it was possible, he also wanted to become the only prodigy of a wandering planet. The central region of the God-fallen world. This was a place of spatial turbulence. Races could not survive here. It was a battlefield where God powerhouses fought. The space was constantly changing. From time to time, spatial rifts, spatial turbulence, spatial collapse, and other terrifying phenomena would appear. Ordinary God powerhouses would not be able to stay here for long before they were buried in the endless spatial turbulence. Only low-level God powerhouses could barely survive here. Generally, those who came here were mid-level and high-level God powerhouses. They fought to improve their strength. Those who were lucky could even find treasures here. After all, many treasures had been accumulated here for countless years. It was densely packed. Outside the central region, mid-level and high-level God powerhouses could be seen everywhere. They were all searching for prey. They did not manage to get the 18 meteorite vortexes, so they naturally wanted to try their luck here. If they were lucky, they might catch someone with a meteorite vortex. After all, that was the cycle of reincarnation. It would only appear once in 100 cycles. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they missed this opportunity, they might not have another chance in their lifetime. Roar, 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 roar. Battles broke out from time to time. This was the border of the central region. One step further, and it would be endless turbulence. Entering the turbulent space would cause one to lose their sense of direction. It would be difficult to get out unless one's attainments in space were extremely high. Therefore, most battles were settled here. They would rather kill the wrong person than let them go, especially those high-level God powerhouses. They were already in a killing frenzy. If they found anything suspicious, they would immediately attack. Only if their opponent was also a high-level God powerhouse would they slightly avoid them. For hundreds of years, this place had been filled with blood and countless casualties. Almost every region was guarded by high-level God powerhouses. Those who had meteorite vortexes but were only mid-level God or low-level God powerhouses had a hard time. They did not know what to do until he arrived. It was a burly man with antlers on his head. His naked upper body was covered with golden fur. The fur on his body shone with a crystalline luster. It was a domineering aura. Hand over the meteorite vortex. In front of him, a high-level God special life form blocked his path. Suddenly, get lost. The burly man with antlers shouted. His voice was loud as a bell, and it shook the high-level God special life form until he was dizzy. With a wave of his hand covered in golden fur, the high-level God special life form was swatted far away as if he was swatting a fly. A high-level God special life form could not even block a single move. The burly man with antlers did not even bat an eyelid. He strode forward. No high-level God powerhouse dared to stop him. Chapter 2164. It's Dear Duke. He's the top-tier deity, Dear Duke? What terrifying strength. The news spread like wildfire. There were many top-tier deities in the God-fallen world, but few had actually seen them. As for the experts in the turbulent void, they knew nothing about the super-experts in the God-fallen world. The one who had been sent flying was a high-tier deity in the turbulent void. He was already considered a top-tier deity in the void, but compared to the giants of the God-fallen world, the difference was like heaven and earth. However, because he had overestimated his strength, the tension at the border of the central region finally relaxed. Many experts no longer dared to act recklessly, especially those whose auras could not be sensed. They might be top-tier deities. 50 years after Dear Duke entered the central region, the second top-tier deity entered. The black butterfly phoenix was a famous top-tier deity in the God-fallen world. She had an exquisite appearance and a pair of beautiful fiery red wings. Her appearance could turn all living things upside down. Unlike Dear Duke, the black butterfly phoenix's appearance was very obvious. She was recognized at a glance. Even if they had never seen her in person, they had heard of her countless times. The two top-tier deities entered the central region without causing too much of a commotion. After all, the main characters had yet to arrive. The mid-tier and high-tier deities with the meteorite vortex had yet to enter the turbulent void. They were all waiting. For the experts with the meteorite vortex, there was no need to enter the central region now. The phenomenon had yet to appear, let alone the beginning of the cycle of destiny. It was still too early. If they showed up now, they would only become targets. Both sides were in a stalemate, and the singularity that would break the stalemate was the phenomenon. The appearance of the phenomenon meant that the cycle of destiny was about to begin. It was like a thunderstorm. Dark clouds gathered and the sky darkened. There was only 100 years left. Southern region. It's about time. Lin Feng let out a long sigh. After spending hundreds of years, he had finally gained control of Prison Fiend Hall. Not only that, but his body had also been strengthened to the limit. At the same time, he had refined the divine light, rhinoceros horn of the 6 paths of light. He only lacked the light saint path, which was not at the origin realm of 100,000. Can we go now? Bailey Shi rolled his eyes with a helpless expression. I'm sorry, Lin Feng apologized. Bailey Jean had completed his cultivation earlier than her and had been waiting for her. It's nothing. The phenomenon hasn't appeared yet. I'm just bored from waiting and my hands are itching for a fight. Bailey Jean stretched his muscles. You'll get a fight very soon. I'm just afraid that you'll get tired of fighting. Lin Feng smiled. Bailey Jean did not understand. Lin Feng said, 8 meteorite vortexes have been unearthed, covering all regions of the God-Fallen world, except for the central region. No matter how stupid the God-Fallen world's powerhouses are, they should be able to guess that they are all gathered there. Bailey Jean glared. What are they doing there? Lin Feng laughed involuntarily. What do you think? You've been searching for so long, but you haven't found a single one. What will you do? Snatch it. Bailey Jean did not hesitate. That's right, Lin Feng said. Before the cycle of fate begins, we still have to overcome this obstacle. How dare you snatch my meteorite vortex? You're courting death. Bailey Jean raised his head, not caring at all. Lin Feng smiled and did not say anything. He did not know the exact situation, but based on his deduction, it would not be peaceful. I wonder how the Patriarch is doing. Lin Feng was also a little worried. After all, the Patriarch was only a low-level god. It was still unknown if he could pass this Dragon Gate formation. However, he believed that with the Patriarch's wisdom, he should be able to think of a solution. Let's go. Although Lin Feng was cultivating, he grasped the time very accurately, so he naturally wouldn't miss anything. When they left the southern region and entered the central region, it had been exactly 500 years since the 8th meteorite vortex had been unearthed. It did not take 100 years to travel from the border of the central region to the center of the central region at the speed of light. Boom! Chi, Lin Feng, and Bailey Jean each killed their opponents back-to-back. So many god powerhouses. Bailey Jin's eyes were like fire. They're all here for the meteorite vortex. Lin Feng's black dragon glowed with a black light, full of fighting spirit. Come, Brother Bailey. Let's see who can kill more. I'm not afraid of you. Bailey Jean instantly rushed out like a tiger. An intense battle. There were naturally many powerhouses at the border of the central region, but there were also many powerhouses in other parts of the central region. Most of them were low-level and mid-level god powerhouses. They could not compete with high-level god powerhouses at the border, so they could only try their luck further away. When they saw 2 low-level god powerhouses, how could they not attack? However, they did not expect these 2 little guys to be so stubborn. They even bit their teeth until they broke. F***CK. One less than you. Bailey Jean was furious. You were too shameless in the end. How could you use a soul attack? I was about to kill that. I'm willing to accept defeat, Lin Feng said with a smile. Here. Bailey Jean took out an outstanding treasure and threw it over. Come again next time. Double the bet. Okay, Lin Feng said with a smile. After his life rating had increased, his combat strength had increased by a lot, especially his close combat ability. It was already close to an ordinary mid-level god powerhouse. The second level of the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow could directly injure an ordinary high-level god powerhouse. If he faced Yao again, there was no need for his clone, Kudan. His main body could kill him with the second level of the Kuan Ling Heart Arrow. With my current strength, I can even put up a fight against a high-level deity. Lin Feng was quite confident. The double increase in his strength and combat strength made him very confident about entering the samsara of destiny. As he slowly approached the central region, Lin Feng was not in a hurry. He had fought with Bailey Jean all the way here, raising his strength through battle. The increase in his life rating had indeed improved his basic abilities, but the comprehension of saber techniques was not something that could be achieved overnight. He could only fight continuously. Right now, the central region was filled with innumerable deities, and they were the best opponents for him. This was especially true when the two of them were evenly matched. He had benefited greatly from it. In just 100 years, he had killed more than 1,000 people. They were all god powerhouses. Only a special place like the God-fallen world would have so many god powerhouses. Just a little more. I can completely grasp the profound meaning of boundless weight. Lin Feng had already reached 100,000 origin realm for boundless weight's brilliance and annihilation laws. What he lacked was to connect them with his saber techniques. Through battle after battle and comprehension after comprehension, the power of boundless weight became stronger and stronger. Lin Feng's current saber technique had reached the mid-level god level. However, this was still not the strongest state of boundless weight. It can still be stronger. Lin Feng was looking forward to seeing the strongest power of boundless weight, an offensive saber technique. Just as he was thinking, Lin Feng suddenly looked up in surprise. A strange energy fluctuation appeared. The meteorite vortex connected, and his heartbeat quickened. The sky changed color. The phenomenon is here. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. Chapter 2165. It had been exactly 600 years since the last meteorite vortex was unearthed. The final anomaly appeared. The wind and clouds changed color, and the space elements were extremely excited. It was like the gears of fate were turning, and a clicking sound rang in his mind. It was a majestic aura pressure that spread to every corner of the God-fallen world. The pressure of the heart. The pressure of the supreme law. In his mind, a circle of light faintly appeared. It seemed to be near and had endless attraction and calling. Reincarnation of fate. Lin Feng muttered to himself. This time, he didn't need the anomaly to guide him. He knew exactly where to go. The anomaly was located in the same direction as the circle of light in his mind, not far away, the central area. What was supposed to come had finally come. But this seems to be a little different from when the meteorite vortex was unearthed. Lin Feng pondered. When the meteorite vortex was unearthed, the anomaly was a clear sign. But when it came to reincarnation of fate, the anomaly seemed to be a clear sign. The order was different. In other words, the reincarnation of fate has been opened, and we can enter the gate of fate? Lin Feng looked at Bailey Jean, who was not far away. The latter grinned and gave him a thumbs up. Needless to say, everyone sensed the same thing. Brother, let's hurry up and enter the central area first, Bailey Jean said. It's not far away. We can reach it in at most 5 years, Lin Feng said. They had fought side by side along the way, and the two had formed a deep friendship. They were both friends and competitors. The central area changed greatly. The anomaly was like a fuse that lit up the entire area, making all the powerhouses excited. The accumulation of 100 reincarnations was now. The special life form of the turbulent void, Nightmare Ape, who had taken the 7th meteorite vortex, was the first to rush out. With its lightning-fast movement technique and the strength of a high-level god, it didn't need to attack at all. It could walk leisurely under the encirclement of a group of god powerhouses. Whoosh! It went straight into the turbulent void. This was an expert who had absolute confidence in his own strength. Then, a huge monster covered in silver-white scales rumbled over. It was like a train crashing, unstoppable. Special life form, Nightmare Ape. Quick, attack it. He wants to enter the turbulent space zone. The attacks landed on Meng Xiang, a special life form, but they could not change his speed. Although the attacks were slightly off course, Meng Xiang only paid a small price and rushed into the space turbulence. On the other side, there was a man with a lion head. Each of his 4 arms was holding a weapon, a blade, a sword, an axe, and a spear. His whole body was emitting a white radiance. and as he shouted loudly, he slashed wildly. Even a high-level deity expert who was blocking his way was severely injured by him. He was incomparably valiant and invincible. Kill him. Dong Wang was among the divine spirits and attacked the lion-headed expert. The surrounding divine spirits were all excited, and their eyes turned red as they kept attacking. However, that lion-headed expert was simply too powerful. Fighting against dozens of enemies by himself, he forcefully opened up a bloody path with his brutal and violent attacks, and charged straight into the turbulent space zone. He's injured. Let's chase after him. Dong Wang shouted and quietly hid behind the God Realm experts. Sure enough, many high-level God Realm experts, who were already in a killing frenzy, rushed in recklessly when they heard that the lion head expert was injured. In the turbulent space zone, there was still a chance to kill him. As long as the meteorite vortex was not used, they still had a chance. Swish! Following the crowd, Dong Wang sneaked into the turbulent space without showing himself. Some succeeded, and some failed. Some mid-level God Realm special life forms who were lucky enough to obtain the meteorite vortex tried to take advantage of the chaos, but they were caught red-handed and gave up the meteorite vortex. Some high-level God Realm experts were very confident in their own strength, but they were surrounded and beaten to death. There were too many high-level God Realm experts gathered at the border of the central area. If one was not strong enough, like Meng Xiang and the lion-headed expert, he had to rely on his wisdom like Dong Wang. Anyway, entering the turbulent space zone was like swimming in the sea. Of course, those top God Realm experts did not dare to stop him. The battle broke out and continued before the vision appeared. As a large number of experts entered the turbulent space zone, the situation became very chaotic. Because no one knew how many meteorite vortexes were in the turbulent space zone, some experts chose to enter the turbulent space zone to fight, and some were still waiting outside. The vision was getting more and more intense. 5 years had passed, and Lin Feng and Bailey Jean had also reached the border of the central area in the constant battle. How do you plan to enter? Lin Feng looked at Bailey Jean. Of course, we'll fight our way in. Bailey Jean stretched his muscles and clenched his fists. I haven't had enough fun before. Lin Feng could not help but laugh. Can you beat a high-level God Realm expert? Bailey Jean chuckled. Just barely. I could take a few blows. Then it's not possible, Lin Feng said. Even if you're lucky and can block one, can you block 3 or 4 at the same time? Bailey Yu scratched his head and said, although he was confident in his strength, he was not so conceited that he could fight 3 or 4 high-level God Realm experts. However, he had been undefeated all along the way, which made him a little arrogant. Brother, do you have a way? Bailey Jean asked. I'll help you attract the firepower. You act according to the situation, Lin Feng said. As he spoke, a figure flashed in front of him. The godlike rhinoceros clone, Ku Dun's rhinoceros horn lit up brilliantly. Light energy gathered and rushed forward. Its iron hooves galloped, as if knocking away everything in its way. Covered in a layer of white light, Ku Dun's aggressive aura instantly attracted the attention of the God Realm experts. Boom, boom, boom. Attacks from all directions bombarded Ku Dun's clone. However, the giant rhinoceros clan's defense was extremely strong. Although Ku Dun was only a high-level God Realm expert, his defense was comparable to a high-level God Realm expert. The high-level God Realm expert's ordinary attacks could at most hurt him. It was not easy to cause substantial damage. Bang! Ku Dun's clone heavily knocked over the high-level God Realm experts blocking his way in front of him. However, as soon as he stopped, he was quickly surrounded. Countless high-level God Realm experts surrounded him. Their eyes were burning, and they all wanted a piece of the action. Will Big White Bull be okay? Bailey Jean asked worriedly. It's fine. Lin Feng looked indifferent. Ku Dun, who was focused on defense, had no problem holding out for a while. If he could not even block these attacks, how could he be a member of the giant rhinoceros clan? In terms of defense, the giant rhinoceros clan was one of the best in the God-fallen world. Even Meng Xiang, who had just charged into the space turbulence, was slightly inferior. However, that Meng Xiang was already a high-level God Realm expert. Kudun's clone was only a high-level God Realm expert. Get ready. Lin Feng looked at Bailey Jean. Charge toward the weakest point of the defense later. Don't be impulsive. Understood, Bailey Jean answered seriously. Chapter 2166. Lin Feng nodded lightly. Then a black light flashed in his hand, and Prison Fiend Hall instantly expanded. Lin Feng's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! A black light shot out, and Prison Fiend Hall flew toward Kudun. Prison Fiend Hall's basic ability, flight. Although it was a basic ability, it was not ordinary. The material of Prison Fiend Hall was a pinnacle true treasure. In terms of defense, it was several times stronger than Kudun's and could withstand a full force attack from a high-level god. Moreover, Prison Fiend Hall contained the law of dark matter, and its flight speed could reach the speed of light. It was extremely difficult to catch up with Prison Fiend Hall, unless the realm of the path of dark matter was higher. What is that? It's so dark. What kind of monster is that? So fast. Catch him. The sudden appearance of Prison Fiend Hall caused a huge commotion. Especially since it was heading straight for Kudun, it caused all the surrounding experts to gather. It would be strange if it was not for the meteorite vortex. All of a sudden, the atmosphere at the border of the central area was ignited. All the high-level gods were in high spirits and aggressive. They saw an opportunity. Thank you, brother. After looking at Lin Feng gratefully, Bailey Jean rushed in another direction. The surrounding experts were all attracted by Lin Feng, causing a vacuum in the defense. There was almost no obstruction in front, but it was only almost. Want to leave? Suddenly, there was a thunderous roar that carried boundless anger. A pitch-black dragon covered in dense, icy scales revealed its true form and blocked in front of Bailey Jean. Its eyes were filled with raging fury. You killed my brother. Die. He attacked furiously, and endless darkness descended. Indeed, all the experts were attracted by Lin Feng, but he was not, because Yao's aura remained on Bailey Jin's body. He wanted to avenge his brother. Damn you, old dragon. Bailey Jean was not a coward. Flames ignited in his hands, and the flame domain spread out and attacked He. He was not afraid of anyone in a battle. Not good. The moment Lin Feng rushed toward Kudun, he had already sensed He's aura. Powerful and tyrannical, the limit of high-level deities. If Bailey Jean was entangled with him, he would be in big trouble. Boom! Prison Devil Hall directly knocked away the divine spirit experts surrounding Horo Dun's doppelganger. Horo Dun was slightly injured, but they were all superficial wounds, so it was not a big deal. According to the normal plan, Prison Devil Hall would have directly charged into the turbulent space. However, Bailey was being held back by He. Lin Feng knew very well that once he left, Bailey Jean would most likely die unless he was willing to give up on the meteorite vortex. But with his personality, he would rather die than do such a cowardly thing. Ha! Lin Feng's true body instantly appeared. In a split second, the wings of warmth had already distorted the space, and the Prison Devil Hall shrank in size, instantly spreading out. A powerful dark matter aura spread out, adhering to the dark matter elements in the surroundings. Evolved ability, Hellfiend Cage, blocking the path of the surrounding deities, even if it was just for an instant, was more than enough. Swoosh! Lin Feng appeared not far away from Bailey Jean. Instantly, He's blood-red dragon eyes looked at Lin Feng. He was shocked and furious at the same time because he could feel that Yao's aura on Lin Feng's body had become even stronger. You're the one who killed my brother. He roared. No, I'm the one who killed him. Bailey Jin's entire body burned with bright red blood, and his entire body turned into a flaming man. His fiery red iron fist seemed to be able to split the world apart, and it was unstoppable. With a boom, it collided with He. The huge inertia sent him flying. Lin Feng's wings of warmth moved, and he directly sent Bailey Jean in the opposite direction, flying straight into the turbulent space. Go! Lin Feng shouted. Bailey Jin's expression changed drastically, but he saw that Lin Feng was surrounded by enemies. In front of him, He's huge body completely blocked his path, and behind him, countless high-level deities were rushing over. The situation was dire. Swoosh! Bailey Jin's vision blurred, and he instantly entered the turbulent space. Lin Feng was still as calm as an ancient well. He had already said that he would bear the responsibility for killing He Yao, and he naturally would not let Bailey Jin take the blame. There was no way out, then he would kill his way out. Kuan Ling Heart Arrow, second level. Lin Feng went straight for He, and his tyrannical soul attack was invincible. It went straight into He's consciousness. The Nether Dragon race's soul was not weak, and He was even a high-level deity. However, the power of his Kuan Ling Heart Arrow's second level had already reached the level of an ordinary high-level deity. Indeed, it was unable to severely injure He, but it was enough to make him lose consciousness temporarily. He felt a tearing pain in his head, and he roared furiously, and his huge dragon tail slammed over. Lin Feng smiled, and his dragon tail swept past the afterimage. Not only did it not attack Lin Feng, but also swept away all the pursuers behind Lin Feng. Rumble! Golden spears clashed, and a large number of people fell. Taking advantage of the short gap, Prison Fiend Hall appeared again, and Lin Feng instantly entered it. Bang! 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 Countless attacks landed on Prison Fiend Hall, but they seemed weak and powerless. Top-tier deities might have a chance, but you guys can't destroy it. The pitch-black pyramid turned into a flash of light. Even though it was surrounded by enemies, it was as easy as pie. Swoosh! Lin Feng entered the spatial turbulence zone. In a short moment, the situation had been reversed. The spatial turbulence zone was chaotic, and the spatial elements fluctuated violently. After Lin Feng entered, he put away Prison Fiend Hall and looked around. There was shattered space everywhere, and wave after wave of spatial turbulence attacked him, but it did not affect him. The changes here are really fast. Lin Feng and Bailey Jin had only entered a few seconds apart. But now, there was no trace of Bailey Jin. The spatial turbulence changed too quickly. Fortunately, there's Prison Fiend Hall. Lin Feng smiled. A pinnacle true treasure was indeed useful. Just its basic ability was comparable to Warm Wings. If not for Prison Fiend Hall's help, Bailey Jin would be in trouble this time. Who? Lin Feng was not in a hurry. After entering the spatial turbulence, no matter how many high-level deities wanted to kill him, they would be powerless. This place was too vast. Before the reincarnation of destiny, the most difficult hurdle had been safely passed. All that was left was to enter the reincarnation of destiny. I wonder what's in the reincarnation of destiny. Lin Feng was very curious. What kind of secret was hidden in this reincarnation of destiny that accompanied the birth of a wandering planet? What was so special about it? Why was there no lack of peak deities and monstrous talents among the thousands and tens of thousands of reincarnations of destiny unable to obtain the recognition of the reincarnation of destiny? Interesting. Lin Feng closed his eyes. The attractive force of the aperture in his mind grew stronger and stronger, as if it was calling out to him. With his senses, he could easily find the direction. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure disappeared, heading straight for the aperture. Chapter 2167. It'll be unfortunate if I encounter an expert proficient in the law of space here. Lin Feng traveled in the turbulent space zone. The Warm Wings could only ensure that he was not affected by the environment and would not go with the flow, but it was impossible for him to use space. It's dangerous. Lin Feng was alarmed and became more cautious. In the turbulent void and the God-fallen world, there was no lack of special life forms and experts with talent in the law of space. If he were them, he would rather hunt here than wait aimlessly outside. There was a geographical advantage. In the turbulent space zone, those who were not proficient in the law of space would be restrained everywhere. They would be attacked by space tears, space squeezes, space collapses, and so on. Those who were slightly better would be like him, who could only protect himself. A true expert in the law of space could use the geographical advantage to enhance their strength. Here, many experts who are proficient in the law of space can even exert the strength of a peak high-level god. Lin Feng knew very well how strong the law of space was. The law of space's ripples could hurt mid-level god experts. Once one was completely trapped in the core of the law of space, even a high-level god expert might die. Brother Bailey, you're on your own now, Lin Feng thought. This was all he could do to help. Here, other than sensing the position of the light circle, he had no other advantage. Of course, it would not be easy for other experts who were proficient in the law of space to attack him, because there was Prison Fiend Hall. He traveled quickly according to the position of the light circle. It was impossible to maintain the speed of light here. The turbulent space zone itself was too strong and dangerous. The instantaneous change in space would catch him off guard. He had to reduce his speed here. There was no hurry. Since he had already entered and the cycle of destiny was right in front of him, Lin Feng took one step at a time steadily. In just a few days, clang, like the sound of zither strings, the space rippled. Lin Feng, who was speeding, paused for a moment, and the corners of his mouth rose. In the distance, a special life form that looked like a demon made a strange sound, causing turbulence in the space. A high-level god expert. However, his aura and strength had only reached the threshold. Although his utilization of the law of space could be considered decent, he still wasn't very proficient in it. His overall combat power should be comparable to that of an ordinary high-level deity. If a peak high-level deity wasn't proficient in the law of space, they could very well fall into a disadvantageous situation when fighting against him. But he himself wasn't. Just in time to test my saber. Lin Feng's current battle prowess had already reached the level of a mid-level deity, and his attack power was especially outstanding. His instantaneous outburst was comparable to that of a peak mid-level deity. It seemed like his strength was limited, but that wasn't the case. Hellfiend Cage. Lin Feng immediately released his pinnacle true treasure, Prison Fiend Palace. Endless energy spread out and sealed the space. Dark matter elements condensed space elements as if to fill up the entire space. Not to mention the law of space and the turbulent space zone. Even the normal law of space was greatly affected. Bang! That special life form with green tentacles immediately revealed a panicked expression. Seeing Lin Feng's swift attack, it instantly raised its green arms to block, but it didn't expect this. Boom! Lin Feng was bold enough to take on a high-level god with the combat power of a mid-level god. However, it was precisely because he was meticulous and confident that he would fight. Without its innate spatial ability, its battle prowess will drop by at least one level, and it won't be able to use its strongest ability to connect with the law of space. Its mentality will definitely be affected. Lin Feng's saber was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Just like his heart, he was resolute and courageous as he moved forward courageously. In the turbulent space zone, he engaged in a fierce battle with the special life form with green tentacles. After a fierce battle, he killed it. First one, Lin Feng held Black Skeleton in his hand, full of fighting spirit. Clang! Haitong seemed to be in high spirits after drinking the blood of the special life form. Black ripples appeared around him, as if he had eaten a good meal. Lin Feng let out a soft cry as he could vaguely sense Haitong's vitality. Obsidian Diamond Core. Lin Feng knew Black Skeleton's true form. This was a pure, dark elemental saber. The obsidian diamond could change into thousands of forms and perfectly suit its owner. However, it only had the basic ability and couldn't engrave other secret seals or secret techniques. Therefore, Black Skeleton was only a top-level excellent true treasure and couldn't be upgraded to a pinnacle true treasure. Black Skeleton could only reach the pinnacle true treasure level under the enhancement of endless dark elements in the Blood Python lair. But now, dark elemental, killing fresh blood. Lin Feng murmured as he instantly understood. It was indeed difficult to upgrade Black Skeleton's grade, but dark elemental treasures loved killing and fresh blood if they had souls. This was the characteristic of darkness, and Black Skeleton was no exception. In particular, Black Skeleton only had some basic instincts and consciousness, which was even more obvious. Because its grade was very high, reaching the level of a top-level, excellent, true treasure. Ordinary fresh blood couldn't satisfy it all. Only fresh blood of a higher grade would it choose to absorb and strengthen itself. That's right. Lin Feng nodded. Black Skeleton's characteristics were outstanding. Although it lost the enhancement of secret seals and secret techniques, it also gained the possibility of strengthening. Because once the secret seals and secret techniques were used, the saber itself became a whole, and there was no possibility of further improvement. There were pros and cons. Huff. Lin Feng exhaled softly and put away the corpse of a special life form with green tentacles. This was the first high-level god spirit master that he had truly killed. Although it was only a threshold, it also represented the advancement and improvement of his strength. Chi. The saber slashed across the body that was as hard as armor, and he took out a sharp cone-shaped object with green jade. It emitted a faint light, like a stone of life, and contained pure energy. Oh! Lin Feng felt the attraction of his bloodline coming from the black vortex. Spatial energy? Huh? Just nice. It's nourishing. Since coming to the space turbulence zone, the black vortex had been very active. However, now that his bloodline had stabilized and the light and dark paths had absolute control of his body, coupled with the cultivation of the Thousand Heaven Path, he already had a stable cultivation path, and the existence of the black vortex was extremely weakened. But after all, it was still a part of his bloodline. Lin Feng refined the sharp cone-shaped object and strengthened the black vortex. It was as if he was improving the level of life, and there was no harm in it. The abundant spatial energy, which contained pure spatial origin energy, allowed the black vortex to eat to its heart's content. Lin Feng revealed a smile when he sensed the black vortex's joy. Killing a high-level god spirit master could strengthen the black vortex and black skeleton, and he could also hone his saber techniques. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Why not? Now, although there are many blind cats running around, there are also many special life forms that are proficient in spatial laws. It's still early, and there's no rush to enter the reincarnation of destiny. I'll hone myself and improve my strength first. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. Chapter 2168. The second one, the third one, the fourth one. After killing 3 powerhouses in a row, 2 of them were high-level deities and 1 mid-level deity. He obtained 2 treasures similar to internal alchemy, which were all absorbed by the black vortex. Black Viper absorbs the blood of high-level deities at a high rate. Special life forms have a higher absorption rate compared to races. Lin Feng quickly came to a conclusion. Black Viper could absorb the blood of high-level deities, but the absorption rate of mid-level deities was very low. He had killed mid-level deities before, and Black Viper's absorption rate was also very low. This was related to its grade. As for the same 2 high-level deities, one was a special life form with a strong bloodline and a higher absorption rate. The other was a race powerhouse. Although the bloodline was good, the absorption rate was not as good as special life forms. As for the Black Vortex, it did not reject anything. It was especially satisfied with anything that contained the origin of space. In this space turbulence zone, it was the one that benefited the most. Even if it did not absorb anything, just by staying here, the space energy was already bursting. Continue. Since there were benefits, why not continue? Lin Feng knew very well that now that he had entered the reincarnation wheel, his competitiveness was far from enough. He might be stronger than the Azure Dragon King and the Patriarch, but at most he was on the same level as Bailey Jean and other high-level deities. What was so special about that? In the reincarnation wheel, he knew that there were 5 top-level deities, and there were many more that he did not know. Compared to them, he was completely uncompetitive. Moreover, if what Bailey Jean said was true, the samsara of destiny had always been waiting for the one and only favored by the heavens. After countless years and tens of thousands of samsara of destiny, there was no lack of pinnacle god-level powerhouses among them. Yet, even they were unable to obtain the favor of the samsara of destiny. So what was a mere high-level, god-level powerhouse worth? Yes, Lin Feng, was an ordinary person. But when the opportunity was in front of him, anyone would want to fight for it. If he did not have ambition, how could he be called a powerhouse? He also wanted to be the only one who could be chosen. Lin Feng knew that he was not the only one. Every powerhouse who entered the reincarnation will have the same idea. Continue hunting. Lin Feng was in high spirits. There was no better battlefield than this. There were as many powerhouses as there were hairs on a cow, and he could not kill them all. By fighting, he could improve his strength. As he kept fighting, his understanding of the boundless weight increased day by day. Brilliance for the heavens. Oblivion is confusion. When the two are combined into one, it is called the boundless expanse. Drive it with force, suppress it with will, and shake it with your heart. This is the true, boundless weight. Light and darkness fused. Lin Feng's eyes burned. After battling again and again, he had finally mastered the boundless heavy profundity through a battle with an ordinary high-level deity. He had already comprehended the Tao of brilliance and the Tao of oblivion to perfection. Now, it was as if the three building blocks were pieced together to form a picture. The name of this picture was Boundless Weight. Boom! The vast earth descended, as heavy as Mount Tai. The brilliant light was powerful, and the oblivion was the most powerful attack. The two merged into one, pushing the power to the limit. The saber concept was perfect. The black dragon glowed brightly and killed the high-level god. Chi, after drinking the blood, Hei Tung was incomparably excited. It gently trembled as it expressed its joy. Finally, Lin Feng also smiled. Fighting was the fastest way to improve one's saber art, especially when fighting one expert after another. Their control of power could trigger resonance and telepathy. However, it was more because his Tao of brilliance and oblivion had reached 100,000 origins. Ancestor Wan Qian created the myriad obscuring heavenly saber based on the 100,000 origins level. Its power could only be unleashed when it reached 100,000 origins. Next, it's the defensive saber art, Mandarin Duck Tai, and Myriad Oblivion. Lin Feng had already comprehended and cultivated the defensive saber art, Mandarin Duck Tai. However, because his Tao of brilliance and Tao of darkness had been stuck at the third stage of perfection, his comprehension of Mandarin Duck Tai had been shackled. Now that his Tao of brilliance had reached 100,000 origins, he only lacked the Tao of darkness. Myriad Oblivion was the fifth move of the myriad obscuring heavenly saber. It was a combination of the Tao of light and the Tao of assassination. It focused on killing. Whether it was the Tao of light or the Tao of assassination, they were both simple and direct. The combination of the two was straight to the limit. Although my Tao of light has reached 100,000 origins, my Tao of assassination is the same as the Tao of darkness. They're both at the third stage of perfection. Lin Feng shivered inside. This was the biggest problem. After comprehending the other four moves, Lin Feng understood the importance of reaching 100,000 origins. If he did not reach 100,000 origins, not only would his comprehension of the saber move be slow, but he would also find it difficult to unleash its full power. I'm already refining the last Sovereign Blood main horn, but I need time. Lin Feng had already refined 5 Divine Light, Rhinoceros horns, and 3 Sovereign Blood main horns. He was currently refining the Sovereign Blood main horn of the Tao of Assassination. This was for the 5th move of the myriad obscuring heavenly saber, Myriad Oblivion. My comprehension of Boundless has directly raised my battle prowess to the limit of a mid-god, and my offensive prowess to the threshold of a high god. Lin Feng grasped Black Lotus. He understood this very well. If I can comprehend Myriad Oblivion, both my battle prowess and offensive prowess will increase once again. However, the phenomenon would only last for 100 years. During this 100 years, the chances of him refining the Sovereign Blood main horn of the Tao of Assassination and comprehending Myriad Oblivion were very slim. Why don't I focus on Mandarin Duck Tai? Although I haven't reached 100,000 origins in the Tao of Darkness, defensive saber moves require less of the loss. Moreover, I've already comprehended Mandarin Duck Tai for a long time. Lin Feng nodded. Another point was that Mandarin Duck Tai was the saber move that combined the energies of light and darkness the most ingeniously. Practicing Mandarin duck tai could deepen the fusion of light and darkness. His fusion of light and darkness had already reached the 6th stage, perfect fusion. It was stronger than the 7th stage, fuse as one, of other experts. However, this was far from all. Only when he reached the 7th stage, fuse as one, could he be considered to have truly succeeded. When that time came, he would be able to cultivate the 9 heavens of light and darkness. Continue tempering. Lin Feng felt like he was dancing on a blade's edge. He had encountered many experts in the spatial turbulence zone. Although many of them were within his hunting range, there were also many that he could not touch. For example, the special life form before him, the 3-headed thunder serpent. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder and lightning roared. The 3-headed thunder serpent was not only proficient in the great Tao of lightning, but its attainments in the Tao of space were also extraordinary. The most terrifying thing was that its body was extremely tough. It was even stronger than the Nether Dragon race. Pung! Lin Feng retreated continuously. Even the Kuan Ling heart arrow could not kill it. He could only flee. However, although the 3-headed thunder serpent's attacks were strong, its speed was only SOSO. It could only watch as Lin Feng left. Although it was furious and its soul felt like it was being hammered, there was nothing it could do. Let's fight another day. Lin Feng's fighting spirit did not decrease. Although he could not win now, it did not mean that he could not win in the future. Chapter 2169. In the space turbulence, he was improving every day. The battlefield was the best place to hone soldiers, and this was the case for Lin Feng. He was transforming step by step. The timid ones were starved to death, and the bold ones were stuffed to death. In just a few short decades, the number of high-level God Realm experts who had died in Lin Feng's hands was uncountable. Until, boom, an expert at the limit of high-level God Realm was killed. First one. Lin Feng's eyes were full of fighting spirit and excitement. His body was covered in blood, and he was badly injured, but he had also gained a lot. After drinking the blood of the ultimate high-level god, Black Skeleton roared and released a pure black light. Endless darkness shrouded him. That was the evolution of the obsidian diamond core, which led to the evolution of Black Skeleton. Good luck. Lin Feng was satisfied. He had severely injured the ultimate high-level god with the Cumling Heart Arrow, and then used Prison Fiend Palace to seal the escape route and lock the space. Although he had severely injured the ultimate high-level god before, this was the first time he had killed one. Black Skeleton had leveled up. It's finally a pinnacle, true treasure. Lin Feng smiled. Although Black Skeleton might be the most common elementary pinnacle true treasure compared to an excellent true treasure, it was much better in all aspects. Besides, he was used to using Black Skeleton, and he might not be used to using other pinnacle true treasures. However, his tempering here was far from over. Maybe there's still a chance to improve. 50 years had passed since the vision appeared. Most of the experts had entered the space turbulence. Although there were still some waiting, the central area was so big that once the number of high-level gods decreased, they would not be able to defend all of them. The defense was gradually emptied, and it was useless. Although there were still some experts who did not give up and hunted everywhere, it was just a last-ditch effort. In fact, it was better to enter the space turbulence to try their luck. The chances might be higher. Tisk tisk. How lively. It's been a long time since it was so lively. The voice was serene, coming from a handsome and devilish man. He was wearing a white robe and a white crown, and his 3 pupils were pure white, which was the characteristic of the Destiny race. Looking at the experts outside the central area who were looking at him, Wu Howdy smiled evilly. Light flashed in his hand, and a meteorite vortex appeared in front of him. All of a sudden, there was a boom like a prairie fire. The surrounding experts rushed toward Wu Howdy like wolves and tigers. In front of those huge special life forms, Wu Howdy's humanoid figure was especially small. But chi, space was torn apart, and a light cross appeared, slashing the deities one after another. They were instantly devoured by the space, and the speed was so fast that it took only a blink of an eye. For a moment, specks of light filled the sky like the stars in the sky, bright and beautiful. Among them, there was no lack of high-level deities. Roar! Behind Wu Howdy, a green python opened its bloody mouth and let out a sharp and unpleasant sound. Its attack speed was incomparably shocking. However, Wu Howdy's Eye of Destiny only opened and a bright light flashed. The cyan python's head shattered in midair and fell to the ground. The surroundings trembled violently. All the experts were terrified as they looked at this tiny humanoid expert in fear. Was greedy and stupid. Wu Howdy smirked. The meteorite whirlpool in front of him suddenly shattered. Wu Hao laughed loudly and swaggered away, entering the chaotic space. This feeling of playing with people in the palm of his hand made him feel incomparably comfortable. 55 years after the vision appeared. At this time, there were not many experts left outside the central area. Thanks to Wu Howdy, there were only a few left. Most of them had entered the turbulent void because there were no more opportunities. At this time, the boundless land welcomed a strange combination of a tall and a small one. He had a pair of horns on his head, and his body was as huge as a mountain giant. His hands and feet were thick and strong, and a casual slap from him seemed to be able to smash a person into pieces. In his right hand was a mace that was flashing with lightning. It was incomparably huge. The smaller one was like a dwarf, only about 1 meter tall. It had a row of white teeth and fangs at the corners of its mouth, making it look like a vampire. However, its skin was as blue as the sea, and it was standing on the mountain giant's shoulder with its arms crossed and an unruly expression on its face. The group of experts shuddered in fear as they all retreated, opening up a path for them. Like the black butterfly phoenix, they were famous top experts in the God-fallen world. The Wu Tong brothers. The big brother, Wu Tongya, was the short dwarf. The little brother, Wu Tong Mountain, was the mountain giant. In the space turbulence, Lin Feng's journey continued. Because he went in the opposite direction and stayed away from the light circle, he did not meet the experts and top gods with the meteorite vortex. Lin Feng was not stupid enough to provoke these monsters, especially when his wings were not fully grown yet. It would not be too late to meet those experts when he entered the reincarnation cycle. Soon, my black vortex is about to evolve as well. Although Lin Feng did not need the black vortex to evolve, it was still a part of his bloodline. It would be better if it could evolve. His light divine pattern and dark divine pattern were both at the 4th stage. Only the black vortex was at the 3rd stage. If it could evolve, his life level would increase by at least 1 level, and his control of space would be stronger. His life level was already that of a high-level, God-level expert. He only needed to evolve by 1 more level to reach the God level. When that time came, his ability in all aspects would be truly terrifying. However, it was very difficult to evolve by 1 level. Unless the light divine pattern and dark divine pattern both evolve to the 5th stage. Lin Feng thought. It was not difficult to evolve the dark divine pattern to the 5th stage because he had the dark light ball. However, the light divine pattern had only just reached the 4th stage. To evolve it, it was far away. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart raced, and he frowned slightly. It was the 6th sense brought about by the heavens' eye cultivation. It was a sign of danger, an extremely dangerous sign. Ever since he entered the space turbulence, he had never felt this way. What danger is it? Lin Feng's expression was serious. He prepared all his defenses and looked around cautiously, but he did not find anything. If even his soul perception could not detect it, what could it be? A riot in the space turbulence? Or, demonic and wanton laughter sounded all around, and an aura suddenly appeared in the distance. Lin Feng's heart trembled, and he instantly sensed it. He looked forward. It was a humanoid man with 3 eyes, wearing a white robe, and the crown on his head was very eye-catching. Destiny race. Lin Feng, is this what you humans say? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Wu Hao put his hands behind his back and looked over with a playful smile. Chapter 2170. Destiny Race. Lin Feng couldn't be more familiar with them. He would recognize them even if they turned into ashes. However, He had never seen or even heard of a destiny race expert with such strength. Their strength was so great that even he couldn't sense it. This was the first time he had been defeated in terms of soul strength. "Who are you?" Lin Feng didn't panic in the face of danger and calmly asked. "Let me introduce myself. I am the king of the destiny race, Wu Howdy." Wu Howdy squinted his eyes and smiled, sizing up his people like a king. "You may not know me, but I know you." Between his eyebrows, the eye of destiny was as transparent as crystal, giving Lin Feng a very familiar feeling. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart trembled as he remembered. "You are the giant eye of destiny in the sky above the destiny realm." Lin Feng looked straight at Wu Howdy. Wu Howdy smiled slightly and didn't deny it, but his eyes revealed a trace of killing intent. Although he was in seclusion, nothing in the destiny realm could escape his eyes. As the king of the destiny race, his duty was to protect the destiny race, and he had never made a mistake. The only time he made a mistake was thanks to Lin Feng. Although that kind of injury was nothing to the destiny race, it was a loss of face. What he stepped on was Wu Hao's face. "Do you have any last words?" Wu Howdy smiled with a knife hidden behind his smile as he looked at Lin Feng. The crystal-like eye of destiny was already open, flashing with a dazzling light. It was different from the other destiny races' eyes of destiny. A top-level divine spirit expert. From a moment Wu Howdy appeared, Lin Feng had already guessed his strength. As the saying goes, if you climb a mountain, you will eventually meet a tiger. He had been hunting everywhere in the chaotic space, so it was normal for him to become the prey now. However, this hunter not only had a grudge against him, but his strength was also far beyond his expectations. Lin Feng directly used Prison Demon Hall, sealing the space with the dark matter element. His intuition told him that although the destiny race was skilled in the way of the soul, Wu Howdy's spatial sense was extremely strong. It wasn't just his sixth sense, but also the information brought by the Black Vortex. For example, if two divine weapons with spirit were to fight, the stronger one would naturally suppress the weaker one. It was the same with the Black Vortex. "Oh." Wu Hao seemed a little surprised, but he was still as calm as ever. With a light tap of his finger, the space around him shattered and turned into a cross-shaped light spot. Chi! The cross-shaped light tore apart Lin Feng, but it was only his afterimage. Wu Hao frowned slightly, as if he was dissatisfied with not being able to kill Lin Feng in one blow. He pointed his finger again, and another spatial cross appeared, but it only managed to destroy Lin Feng's afterimage. "You're good at dodging." Wu Hao's hands quickly pointed. Chi! 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 Spatial crosses appeared one after another, but each time they could only hit Lin Feng's afterimages. They couldn't catch his real body at all. Humph! Pinnacle true treasure. Wu Howdy understood. These dark matter elements not only blocked the space, but they were also Lin Feng's eyes. They clearly informed him of the fluctuations in the space, which gave Lin Feng time to use his movement technique to dodge. Child's play. Die. Wu Hao's eyes suddenly shone with white light. In an instant, the eye of destiny shone brightly, and boundless soul power blasted Lin Feng. He had played enough and didn't want to waste any more time with this ant. However, Peng. Wu Hao's body shook violently. His soul attack seemed to have hit an iron wall, which made his chest feel stuffy and his sea of consciousness tremble. This feeling that he had never felt before made Wu Hao turn pale with fright, and his body staggered. How is this possible? Wu Hao's expression changed greatly, and his handsome face was extremely shocked. Suddenly, the dark matter energy around him disappeared, and Lin Feng's aura suddenly disappeared. What? Wu Hao's expression changed, and he directly locked onto the black, pyramid-like object. The spatial cross appeared again. Chi. However, it was still a step too late. The moment the space was cut, the black pyramid flew at the speed of light and disappeared without a trace. Damn it! Wu Hao clenched his fists, and blue veins appeared on his fair skin. He was extremely angry. This was the first time he had been defeated since he came out of seclusion, and the person he faced was Lin Feng, who had a grudge against him. He was a top deity, but he couldn't even take down a little brat. If word got out, he would lose face. Run. Let's see where you can run to. Wu Hao gritted his teeth, and the murderous intent in his eyes grew stronger. The next time I see you, I will tear you into pieces. Whoosh. Prison Fiend Hall penetrated the space turbulence. Although countless space laws blasted Prison Fiend Hall and even moved it, it didn't damage Prison Fiend Hall at all. The strongest law of space was the law of space in the space turbulence zone. An attack at the core of the law of space could only kill high-level gods. However, Prison Fiend Hall's defense was comparable to the threshold of a top deity. It was difficult to destroy Prison Fiend Hall. Therefore, flying in Prison Fiend Hall in the space turbulence was relatively safe, and it could maintain the highest speed of light. It was just that it was difficult to control its position and direction. I didn't expect the Destiny Tribe to have such a terrifying expert. Lin Feng had a lingering fear. If he hadn't used Prison Fiend Hall early, he would have been killed by Wu Hao's terrifying space attack. Fortunately, he had the Prison Fiend Cage to seal the space and sense the space ripples, so he had the time to use 5 transformations overlapping shadows to dodge. However, dodging was one thing, but he couldn't counterattack. Once he got close to Wu Hao and shortened the distance, it would be impossible to dodge. Actually, I should have thought of this. Lin Feng sighed softly. The Destiny Tribe was as famous as the Emperor Star Tower, so they weren't ordinary. The Emperor Star Tower had the strongest person on the Origin Awakener list, Yin Fagia. What did the Destiny Tribe have? The strongest person, Wu Long, was only ranked 7th on the Origin Awakener list, a low-level deity. In terms of strength, he was even weaker than Dragon Emperor Jinkong. In addition, the Destiny Tribe had a small population. Even if they had more deity-level experts, they would only have 1 or 2. In terms of overall strength, they were at most on par with the Milky Way's human tribe and the Void Dragon tribe. How could they be as famous as the Emperor Star Tower? Just because of the Death Soul attack? If they really wanted to destroy the Destiny Tribe, all the major forces would have worked together to flatten them. The Destiny Tribe had so many treasures, so how could they not be coveted? They had survived from ancient times until now, so they naturally had a big secret. If they didn't have a super expert on par with Yin Fagia, how could the Destiny Tribe be so powerful? Top-level deity-level expert, Wu Hao Di. Lin Feng remembered. The soul attack just now was quite terrifying, much stronger than his second Kuan Ling hard arrow. Not only was his soul power strong, but his soul secret technique was also more profound and powerful. He was indeed an expert who specialized in the path of the soul. His soul attack is very strange. Yes, it's actually quite similar to the Kuan Ling hard arrow. Right, the 3rd level of the Kuan Ling hard arrow also has the same combination. Oh, I understand now. Chapter 2171. After personally experiencing the soul attack, Lin Feng actually gained something. The Insect Spirit Race's Insect Spirit Heart arrow was very powerful, but it was not easy to cultivate it. After all, it was the Insect Spirit Race's innate ability, and he was only able to cultivate it because of the Insect Spirit Race's inner core. However, there were traces of the 1st and 2nd stage, but not a single Insect Spirit Race member had completed the 3rd stage. Everything had to be done by himself. Right now, Wu Hao's soul attack was blocked by the 10,000 Origin Mustard Stone, and Lin Feng benefited greatly from it. The Great Tao was the same. Especially the soul attack. It was mysterious and direct, but the method was different. There were many ways to condense soul power that could be used as a reference. Lin Feng already had the foundation of cultivating the 2nd stage of the Insect Spirit Heart Arrow, and with this enlightenment, he was instantly enlightened. Seclusion, cultivation. Sitting in the prison devil hall, Lin Feng was not afraid of danger. Plus, he needed to stay away from Wu Hao, so he did not plan to come out. The next time I see him, I'll leave in the prison devil hall when my 6th sense senses it. Lin Feng also learned his lesson. He did not have the strength to fight Wu Hao head-on, but he could still hide. As the saying goes, revenge is a dish best served cold. 10 years is a little short. Maybe after 1,000 years, I'll have the strength to take revenge? Although Lin Feng was defeated, he did not lose his confidence. Just like when he lost to the three-headed lightning serpent, he was now practicing his saber, preparing to kill the three-headed lightning serpent. First, he would cultivate the third stage of the insect spirit heart arrow. Now that he had a direction, his thoughts flowed like a spring, and his comprehension increased rapidly. Sitting in the prison devil hall, time flew by, and unknowingly, dozens of years had passed. The phenomenon gradually came to an end, until the 90th year. Hua! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, revealing a joyful expression. The pure soul power was divided into three, turning into three Kunling void arrows and shooting out. The three merged into one in the air, as if there was a magnetic force, condensing into one soul arrow with extremely powerful soul power. Its power increased dramatically. Qi, the penetrating power, was extremely strong. Success. Lin Feng clenched his fist, feeling the loss of 30% of his soul force. With a thought, the soul arrow in the air dissipated like fireworks, returning to his sea of consciousness. I have nothing to fear from a high-level god. The comprehension of the third level of the Kunling heart arrow had allowed Lin Feng to undergo a perfect transformation. His combat strength had greatly increased. Roar! Roar! The three-headed lightning serpent roared furiously. Its three heads stirred up the lightning of the heavens and the earth as they violently exploded. It wanted to kill this insignificant human expert in front of it. However, in the blink of an eye, its head suddenly shook violently. Bang! Bang! After two consecutive strikes, the two heads of the three-headed thunder WYRM fell silent, and its aura vanished completely. What a fellow! He actually has three souls. Lin Feng had used the third layer of the Kunling heart arrow twice in a row, and the consumption of 60% of his soul power was not light. Naturally, he could not use the third layer, or else he might fall into a deep sleep. Clang! Hei Tung turned into a huge black dragon and attacked the three-headed thunder WYRM. Now, it only had one head left, and its strength was greatly reduced. It had less than 1/10 of its peak high-level god strength left. Moreover, it was even more fearful when facing Lin Feng because its two souls had been completely destroyed. With one attacking and one defending, Lin Feng quickly killed the last head. Boom! The boundless sky fell heavily like Mount Buzhou falling. The three-headed thunder WYRM roared toward the sky. It was extremely unwilling, but in the end, it fell into a pool of blood and died on the spot. If the special life forms and races of the God-fallen world saw this, they would definitely be shocked and dumbfounded. Among all the high-level gods in the God-fallen world, the three-headed thunder WYRM could be ranked in the top 3. However, it was also lucky to be able to kill it. Hei Tung happily drank the blood. Lin Feng let out a long sigh. This troublesome fellow was finally dealt with. Although the three-headed thunder WYRM had 3 souls, each soul was only half the size of a normal soul. Therefore, the third stage of the Kunling heart arrow could directly kill it. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. After all, the three-headed thunder WYRM was a special life form with a relatively high level of life. Most importantly, it was proficient in the law of space. However, it was limited by the fiend prison cage and couldn't use it. Therefore, he could destroy it in one fell swoop. There's still time. I'll continue to hunt while approaching the circle of light. Lin Feng calculated and didn't want to waste the remaining 10 years. After all, the black vortex was only a step away from evolving. It could absorb the spatial energy in the turbulent space zone, refine the treasures that contain the origin of space and the special life form's cores. Before entering the cycle of reincarnation, he would give himself the strongest state and ability. One head after another. More and more high-level gods died in Lin Feng's hands. On the other hand, there were fewer high-level gods in the turbulent space zone. As the phenomenon gradually reached its peak, everything was about to be settled. I didn't expect to meet you in the end. Lin Feng smiled as he looked at the giant dragon covered in scales in front of him. The leader of the nether dragons. Hee hee. Roar. When enemies met, their eyes turned red. He opened his mouth and shot out a ball of light containing dark energy like a cannonball. Hiao's aura was the strongest on Lin Feng. He had chased him from his central area to the turbulent space zone and finally found him. This time, he definitely wouldn't let this human go. However, in just an instant, he felt a tearing pain in his soul. A terrifying suffocation assaulted him, and the pain was so excruciating that it felt like he was being torn apart. A shadow flashed in front of him, and Hei Tong slashed across He's neck. Darkness devoured and directly absorbed. Chi! 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 Lin Feng quickly swung his saber, claiming that he was sick and wanted to take his life. His saber technique was like a rainbow, and he struggled violently amidst his screams. How tenacious! Lin Feng was filled with fighting spirit. At this time, his black vortex had already evolved to the 4th stage, and his combat strength was even higher than before. Under normal circumstances, his saber attack couldn't break through the defense of high-level gods. However, he was now in a weakened state. As expected, Hei Tong loves the blood of dark-type special life forms the most. Hei Tong was incomparably excited, sparkling and sparkling. The blood that he drank after killing countless high-level gods was accumulating at this moment, strengthening Hei Tong once again. A mid-level peak true treasure. Very good. Lin Feng gently stroked Hei Tong's blade, revealing a satisfied smile. Now, Hei Tong's grade was no lower than Prison Fiend Hall's, and even higher. If a worker wanted to do a good job, he must first sharpen his tools. Before he entered the reincarnation cycle, Hei Tong's upgrade to the top grade was undoubtedly great news. Killing he was nothing to Lin Feng. He had even killed the 3-headed Thunder Serpent. Compared to the 3-headed Thunder Serpent, he was nothing. In the turbulent space zone, he was invincible. It's time to enter the circle of light and participate in the reincarnation cycle. Following the guidance of the meteorite vortex, Lin Feng controlled Prison Fiend Hall to recover his strength while rushing into the core of the turbulent space zone. Soon he arrived. Swish, the meteorite vortex shone and merged into the circle of light. Lin Feng held Hei Tong in his hand, his eyes burning with fighting spirit as he strode in. Chapter 2172. Whoosh! Through the circle of light, Lin Feng felt as though he had entered an endless tunnel. The space around him was chaotic, and it was as though a 3-dimensional diagram had been disrupted, forming all sorts of irregular shapes. It was ever-changing, but also all sorts of mysteries. What powerful spatial laws! Lin Feng was secretly shocked. He couldn't understand it, but the black vortex could sense it. The spatial energy here far surpassed that of the turbulent spatial zone, because this was a complete system. In comparison, the turbulent spatial zone was like an ungoverned region, a mess. There were traces to follow. There was a path to follow. Lin Feng stepped on a path that he himself wasn't very clear on. He walked slowly, relying entirely on his intuition, because he couldn't see clearly at all. He couldn't understand what the spatial laws here were for. Changing again. I'm so confused. Lin Feng sighed. Wandering planets were filled with shockingly dense spatial energy, and it could be seen most clearly here. It was as though the entire planet's spatial energy was gathered here, as though there was an invisible hand controlling it. There's a rule? Lin Feng didn't know either. It was just that, as a heaven-tier cultivator, it was purely his sixth sense. Step by step, sometimes he walked up a flight of stairs, sometimes he passed through a tunnel, sometimes he fell into an abyss. The black vortex wantonly absorbed spatial energy, and after reaching the 4th stage, the absorption rate was even greater. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry, as there wasn't any danger. 1 year, another year. It should have been over 100 years now. Has the phenomenon disappeared? Or has it only just begun? Lin Feng didn't know, because he had already completely lost himself in this unpredictable spatial matrix. He felt as though he was going around in circles, but he also felt as though he wasn't. Every time the space changed, there would always be some sort of pattern, but he couldn't figure it out or understand it. My spatial attainments are really too weak. Lin Feng laughed bitterly. Any random deity expert would most likely have spatial attainments greater than his. After all, to become a deity expert, one had to have a certain level of comprehension of spatial laws. But he was far from enough. Brother Bailey once said that the heavenly cycle was more of a test. Could it be that he was referring to this? Lin Feng faintly realized this, but his attainments in the Tao of space were too weak. Wanting to find a way out was harder than ascending to the heavens. Instead of walking aimlessly and following my instincts, I might as well follow the black vortex. Lin Feng gently nodded. His sixth sense did not seem to be of much use in this maze. This place was more concerned with the mysteries of the law of space. Instead, the black vortex's absorption and reaction were the most straightforward. The more excited it was, the more spatial energy there was, and the stronger the nomological laws. Just go in that direction. On a boundless piece of land, there stood a craggy mountain. It was pure white in color, as if it was made from the most beautiful crystal in the world. It was so tall that one couldn't see the top. Every inch of the crystal contained extreme spatial energy, and there were fine lines on it that could be felt by gently touching it. At this moment, on the mountainside of the crystal peak, four experts were either floating, standing, or sitting cross-legged. One of them had a fair complexion, and her entire body seemed to be made from transparent diamonds. Her beautiful face looked as if it had been carved. It was the work of the gods. This was the special life form of the god-fallen world, the Diamond Empress. She was formed from the best Diamond Empress, and the Diamond Empress's heart that had been nurtured had enlightened her and grown. One had to know that the value of a Diamond Empress was the same as an outstanding true treasure. The Diamond Empress's heart was rare in the world. Every Diamond Empress was a natural spatial artifact. The Diamond Empress, a special life form that had grown from the Diamond Empress's heart, was extremely proficient in the Tao of space. It could even be said that she was the embodiment of the law of space. Not far from the Diamond Empress was a two-headed monster. It was a top-tier deity expert from the chaotic void, Tiku. One side was in the shape of a beast, and the other was in the shape of a human. The beast side was proficient in the Tao of earth and the Tao of strength, while the human side was proficient in the Tao of space and the Tao of soul. It was excellent in both offense and defense, and had no weaknesses. Its combat strength was terrifying. In front of the Diamond Empress and Tiku were two experts. One of them was wearing a white robe and a white crown. His face was so handsome that it didn't look human, and there was an indescribable evilness. It was Wu Howdy, who had failed to kill Lin Feng. The other was only a high-level deity expert from the God-fallen world, the clan that was most proficient in the Tao of space. He was the leader of the Six Ears clan, Lu Erkong. There were three top-tier deity experts and one high-level deity expert. On the hillside of the Crystal Peak, there were many experts. There were 8 of them, including the demonic ape, the Azure Dragon King, and Yin Fagia. There were also 3 top-tier deity experts. Most of them were at the foot of the Crystal Peak. There were a total of 12 experts, including CI, Dong Wang, Bailey Jean, the Bloodmane Beast King, and T1. There were even 2 top-tier deity experts from the God-fallen world. They were the Wudong brothers. "What's the matter? Why do you keep staring at me?" Dong Wang asked CI. Looking carefully, there was a faint layer of light membrane outside his body. Not only Dong Wang, but every expert had a layer of light membrane outside their body. It was like a shield. It was very strange. "Huh." CI closed his eyes and didn't say a word. Dong Wang was also helpless. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. Although he and CI both came from the Origin Awakened continent and were in the top 10 of the Origin Awakened list, they weren't familiar with each other. So, he didn't know what CI wanted. He only knew that this expert, who was ranked second on the Origin Awakened list, was not to be trifled with. He was like a jackal, seeking revenge for the smallest grievance. The experts who were targeted by him had no other choice but to die. Looking around, Dong Huang sighed softly. He felt a heavy pressure on his shoulders. Among all the experts here, even the weakest was a mid-level deity. That included Bailey Jean, who had gained fame and obtained the inheritance from the Heaven's Path. He was already a mid-level deity expert at a young age. He was the only one who was a novice divine spirit. There were even 2 top-tier deity experts here. If it weren't for the blessing of the heavens that prevented him from attacking other experts, he would have died long ago. Dong Wang could feel that CI didn't seem to have good intentions toward him. What exactly is the reincarnation of the heavens? Dong Wang was very curious. Looking up, he could vaguely see the experts on the hillside. However, it was very blurry when he looked up. With his strength, he couldn't peek at them. He could only barely sense them. However, he knew that there were other experts on the hillside because there were other experts here who could see them. What should he do next? Dong Wang was confused and hesitant. He didn't know whether it was right or wrong for him to enter this place. However, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only brace himself and walk forward. Suddenly, a strong fluctuation rose up, attracting the attention of all the experts at the foot of the hill. Whoosh! A familiar figure flashed in an instant. Oh! Lin Feng walked out slowly and looked around in surprise. Chapter 2173. Where is this? After spending nearly 100 years, Lin Feng finally walked out of the illusory spatial matrix. He could be considered lucky. Thanks to the guidance of the Black Vortex, he had succeeded after many experiments. As soon as he walked out, he sensed a huge aura around him, causing Lin Feng's heart to clench. This was what he was most afraid of. If the other party wanted to sneak attack him, he would be in danger. However, it did not seem to happen. 7th brother? Dong Wang said in surprise. Brother. Bailey Jean was overjoyed. Whoosh! Killing intent flashed in Thorn's eyes. Lin Feng? The blood-maned Beast King raised its right claw and licked it. The 2 blood-maned horns on its forehead trembled slightly as it stared at Lin Feng with its sharp eyes. He seems to have the aura of our ancestors. Everyone's here. Lin Feng swept his gaze and could not help but smile when he saw Dong Wang and Bailey Jean. He had finally walked out. Damn, brother, you've been here for too long. Bailey Jean suddenly threw a punch at Lin Feng. Suddenly, the light membrane barrier around Lin Feng's body flashed, and with a bang, Bailey Jin's fist was repelled. The latter groaned and staggered, his face bitter. Lin Feng was slightly surprised as he looked at the thin light membrane barrier around his body. What was this? There's one when you come in. It should be to prevent the experts from killing each other. Dong Wang said to Lin Feng and pointed gently. Every expert has one. As long as you attack the other party, the attack will be bounced back. The stronger the attack, the stronger the rebound. So strange. Lin Feng was surprised. He could touch the light membrane barrier without any obstruction and could easily touch his skin. However, Bailey Jean was just joking around just now, but he was bounced away. His defensive ability was quite outstanding. Whoosh! Lin Feng suddenly turned his head and looked at the cold face in the distance. He was slightly puzzled. Thorn? Just now, he felt like his back was being pierced and the killing intent was strong. When he turned around, he did not expect it to be Thorn, the expert ranked 2nd on the Origin Awakening list. Logically speaking, it was his first time meeting him, so why was he so full of killing intent towards him? What enmity? What happened? Dong Wang asked. Nothing, Patriarch. Lin Feng turned around and smiled. I just felt a trace of killing intent. Stab. Dong Wang also saw Lin Feng's action just now and focused his eyes. Lin Feng nodded. Patriarch, did you offend him? Dong Wang shook his head. I don't know. Before you came, he had been staring at me with hostility. Logically speaking, the Milky Way's human tribe and I shouldn't have any conflicts of interest with each other. Lin Feng nodded. Be careful. Needless to say, with his current strength, Thorn couldn't do anything to him at all. A mere mid-level deity expert could be easily dealt with a saber. After 100 years of tempering in the turbulent space zone, Lin Feng had not only greatly improved his strength, but also his confidence. Countless high-level deities had died in his hands, let alone mid-level deities. Even if Thorn's assassination skills were powerful, he wouldn't care too much about it. Oh, Lin Feng raised his head. There are 8 experts on the hillside, and 3 of them are top-level deities? Lin Feng was slightly surprised. plus the 2 at the foot of the hill, there were 5 top-level deities at present. Wait, there seemed to be more above. 1, 2, 3 for auras, and one of them is him. Although it was very weak, Lin Feng still sensed Wu Haoti's aura and was a little afraid. Wu Haoti's strength was far above his. Now that he could sense his existence, Wu Haoti could also sense him. This was troublesome. The enmity between him and the Destiny clan was not something that could be resolved overnight. It must be a fight to the death. Seventh brother, can you see the mountainside? Dong Wang was surprised. Barely. Lin Feng nodded. He was also curious, wondering what the foot of the hill, the hillside, and the mountainside were for. Impressive. Dong Wang looked up and down at Lin Feng. I haven't seen you for a while, but you seem to have become stronger. Needless to say, my brother has killed a high-level deity of the Nether Dragon clan. Bailey Jean was a blabbermouth. He patted his chest proudly. What? Dong Wang was shocked. Seventh brother, you can kill a high-level deity? It was a bit of a coincidence, Lin Feng said modestly. I still underestimated you. Dong Wang sighed. Seventh brother, your talent and potential are higher than I thought. Even a high-level deity was defeated by you. TSK. Luck was just a humble word for the strong. Dong Wang knew this very well. You can kill a high-level deity with luck? You can kill one for me to see. By the way, Patriarch, how long have you been here? Lin Feng asked. More than 100 years, Dong Wang replied. Me too. Bailey Jean shrugged. I've been waiting here, but I don't know what I'm waiting for. Lin Feng nodded. Then did you go through that spatial maze before? Spatial maze? Dong Wang was surprised. Not really. You can comprehend the spatial laws there. It's a precious place for cultivation. It's a pity that I only managed to comprehend a little after a long time. Bailey Jean gasped. Damn, you can comprehend the spatial laws? Why can't I comprehend it? Because you're like me, your spatial attainments are too weak. Lin Feng chuckled. He more or less understood. For martial artists with strong spatial attainments, it was like a treasure trove, but for martial artists with weak spatial attainments, it was like a cage. No wonder. Bailey Jean nodded in realization. Damn it, I was trapped for almost 50 years before I got out. 50 years, Lin Feng said. I guess I was trapped for nearly 100 years. That exaggerated? Bailey Jean exclaimed. You're lucky to be able to get out within 100 years. A white-winged man with a smile slowly walked over from afar. He looked a little like a winged person, but his skin was white and his whole body emitted a holy light. He was a special life form in the God-fallen world, Rosewing. Hello, I'm Rosewing from the land of the Demon Moon. The white-winged man, Rosewing, said with a smile. Lin Feng, Bailey Jean, Dong Wang. Lin Feng and the other two introduced themselves. The other party greeted them with a smile and a gentle voice. He looked approachable, and his strength was not bad. He was an ultimate high-level god expert. The land of the Demon Moon was one of the most dangerous places in the turbulent void. It cannot be compared to the God-fallen world in the turbulent void, but it was still quite good. An ultimate high-level god expert was almost the strongest in the land of the Demon Moon. Brother Rosewing, do you know anything? Lin Feng asked curiously. Rosewing nodded with a smile. Have you seen the experts on the mountainside and the hillside? Lin Feng and Bailey Jean nodded. Dong Wang was a little embarrassed, but he also nodded. This is the beginning of the first reincarnation of the heavenly cycle, Rosewing said with a smile. Chapter 2174. I'd like to hear the details, Dong Wang asked. Mei retracted her white wings and smiled. Actually, this isn't a big secret. Many special life forms who are born with bloodlines know that the heavenly fate reincarnation is also known as the 6 paths of reincarnation. The reason is that there are 6 tests. Lin Feng nodded. Many special life forms were indeed bloodline descendants and passed down their memories to the next generation. However, this kind of inheritance was equivalent to the ancient books of humans and was of little help to one's strength. The 6 paths of reincarnation has existed since the birth of the mother planet. With the lifespan of primitive life forms as one cycle, the heavenly fate reincarnation will appear every 100 cycles. Of course, there aren't many primitive life forms left now, and their lifespan is far longer than one cycle. Lin Feng understood. The primitive life forms that were still alive, such as the heavenly fate race, had evolved in the endless battles, and their lifespan had greatly increased. Today's heavenly fate race could easily survive more than 10 cycles. How many times has the 6 paths of reincarnation been activated? Bailey Jean couldn't help but ask. Mei smiled. More than 80,000 times. Bailey Jean took a deep breath. 80,000 times, and not a single powerhouse passed? If there is, the 6 paths of reincarnation will disappear, Mei said. From then on, he will become the master of the mother planet. All of us powerhouses will serve him as our master, become his people, and be ruled by him. F***CK. Awesome. Bailey Jin's eyes were burning. Even Dong Huang's eyes were shining. This kind of power was unique. With so many high-level god powerhouses obeying him, he was like the emperor of the universe. It could be said that his power was monstrous. There were only 3 things that men liked: power, power, and women. Power was power, and power was power. Since ancient times, many powerhouses fought to the death for power. Become the master of a wandering planet and control a planet? Lin Feng nodded slightly. It was undeniable that this reward was indeed very attractive. In terms of the level of life planets, a wandering planet was already a top 8-star life planet. Moreover, this kind of control should be complete control, which was the kind that was recognized by the mother planet. In other words, he could use the supreme rules of a wandering planet to do whatever he wanted. This was already quite terrifying. In other words, when fighting on a wandering planet, one could borrow the power of the wandering planet. How terrifying was the power of an 8-star top-grade life planet? Even a heavenly god would be somewhat fearful. Moreover, everything on a wandering planet could be his, including the lives, treasures, resources, and so on. If he roamed the universe, he would have inexhaustible assets. If I can break through the 6 paths of reincarnation and take control of the wandering planets, it'll be equivalent to having a huge universe territory. Lin Feng thought to himself. The wandering planet was very mysterious. It was only so big, but its real area was far greater than that. It contained boundless space laws, and on a wandering planet, size was meaningless. Because it could expand space infinitely, even a piece of crystal could easily open up the area of the Earth. Of course, the only thing that didn't change was the total amount of energy. No matter how much space expanded, the energy of the wandering planets would not change. But this was already very good. The Milky Way is about to be destroyed. The Milky Way super black hole will devour everything and collapse. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. If I can become the master of a wandering planet, not only can I move all the humans on Earth to the wandering planet, but I can also move all the lives in the Milky Way. Even if the Milky Way is destroyed, life will still exist. There's still a long way to go. In the future, I might be able to find another Milky Way to settle down. There were as many galaxies in the universe as there were hairs on a cow. It was easy to find one larger than the Milky Way. Only life was irreversible. Once they died and turned into cosmic dust. He had been looking for a way to save the Milky Way, but he still had no clue. He wanted to borrow the True Dragon Sovereign's True Dragon Dark Domain, but Bai didn't allow it. But now, at least there was a good plan. Maybe this isn't the best way, but it's definitely the most feasible way for now. Lin Feng nodded. But the biggest problem was that it wasn't easy to become the master of a wandering planet. Break through the 6 paths of reincarnation. There were a total of 6 tests. Since the birth of a wandering planet, it had been accompanied by the 6 paths of reincarnation. However, after more than 80,000 reincarnations, no one could pass it. One could imagine how difficult the 6 paths of reincarnation was. With his current strength, would he be able to succeed? Lin Feng himself knew that the chances of success were next to none. Actually, you don't have to be so discouraged. Mei smiled and said, although more than 80,000 reincarnations, the first few tens of thousands of reincarnations are actually not that competitive because the primitive life of the mother planet is weak at that time. Only a few foreign powerhouses will try, so the probability is naturally not high. Lin Feng nodded. When a planet just started to develop, everything was in a state of enlightenment. Bloodline was not perfect. Attack laws, secret techniques, and cultivation methods were all in a state of exploration. It was already good enough to become a god-level powerhouse, but it was impossible to pass the 6 paths of reincarnation. Bloodlines and cultivation methods were gradually perfected and improved through generations of inheritances. Now, it was close to perfection. After nearly 10,000 reincarnations, the powerhouses of the mother planet have gone further and further in the 6 paths of reincarnation. From the 4th path of reincarnation, they have broken through to the 5th path of reincarnation. The strongest have even broken through to the 6th path of reincarnation. I believe that the strongest powerhouse will be born sooner or later. Mei smiled, especially since the mother planet is very protective of us primitive life forms. The requirements for us to pass the 6 paths of reincarnation will be much lower than those from the outside. Lin Feng was stunned. So bad? In other words, it would be even more difficult for him to pass the 6 paths of reincarnation? Especially this time, a super existence was born. Mei Yi's eyes were filled with joy. Mei Yi's eyes glowed with endless joy. He is the pride of our wings race. He has never tasted defeat since he was born. After cultivating for so long, he has reached the limit of what the mother planet can accommodate, the peak state. Since the birth of us primitive life forms, only 3 have reached the peak state, and all of them have broken through to the 6th path of reincarnation. Mei Yi's eyes were filled with excitement. I believe that he will be able to pass the 6th path of reincarnation. Lin Feng was shocked. It seemed that he still knew too little. After all, the clone Kudun was not a special life form. His intelligence was limited, and he did not know about the events of the God-fallen world. There were indeed peak powerhouses who passed the reincarnation, but most of them were not primitive life forms, so the difficulty was naturally higher. So, he is now on a mountainside? Lin Feng faintly understood. It seemed that the stronger the powerhouse, the higher they stood. The 13 powerhouses at the foot of the mountain, including himself, seemed to be the weakest. Chapter 2175. No, he's not here yet, Mei said with a smile. Maybe he's delayed by something, but he'll come soon, because the test of the first reincarnation will start soon. The alien space matrix was a simple screening test to eliminate some ordinary life forms who wanted to fish in troubled waters. The time taken to pass the alien space matrix was divided into 3 levels: the mountainside, the hillside, and the foot of the mountain. Lin Feng and the other 2 nodded. They understood a lot. Dong Huang's expression was strange. What's the time limit for the mountainside, hillside, and foot of the mountain? Mei said with a smile. Pass the alien space matrix in 1 year, stand on the hillside in 10 years, and stand at the foot of the mountain in 100 years. If you can't pass the alien space matrix in 100 years, you'll be expelled. This has something to do with the first reincarnation? Dong Huang asked again. Mei glanced at him. Yes, the strong people standing on a mountainside will have a lot of advantages. People like us at the foot of the mountain may be eliminated in the first reincarnation. Mei couldn't help but smile. Obviously, he didn't have any hope of passing the 6 reincarnations. Swish! Dong Huang's face turned bitter. Lin Feng glanced over and knew that the Patriarch was vexed. With the Patriarch's attainments in the Tao of Space, he should have been able to stand on the hillside at the very least. It was just that he had been immersed in comprehending the Tao of Space and missed the opportunity. As for himself, it was just a warm-up for the first reincarnation. I was lucky to pass all 6 reincarnations. What should we do? Lin Feng was also helpless. He vaguely felt that the 6 reincarnations were inseparable from the law of space. The wandering planet was very special. The law of space completely suppressed the law of time. There was almost no one here who cultivated the law of time. The space element was overflowing everywhere, especially in the God-fallen world. At this moment, standing on a mountainside, his space attainment was refined to the extreme. Compared to them, he was indeed standing at the foot of the mountain, insignificant. It wasn't that his space talent was weak. It was just that he hadn't cultivated for a long time and hadn't even reached the level of God. He hadn't focused on the law of space, so he was naturally weak in this aspect. It's too late now. I can only take one step at a time. Lin Feng sighed. The opportunity had appeared, but the problem was that it didn't seem to be an opportunity that belonged to him. It was really difficult to seize it. Mei was very talkative and was also very willing to make friends. After chatting with her for a while, she learned quite a bit about the God-fallen world and the various powerful individuals. This was because she herself was a special life form and a high-level ultimate powerhouse. In terms of strength, he was not weak, but he was not proficient in the Tao of space. Experts of the God-fallen world who were proficient in spatial laws were usually experts of the God-fallen world. This was because the God-fallen world had the most abundant spatial energy. Of course, there were also exceptions. After all, there are so many wandering planets and so many races. It was possible for 1 in 10,000 of them to appear. Of the 4 experts standing on the mountainside, 2 of them were not from the God-fallen world. Special life form Weep. Unlike Dong Wang, Lin Feng could not only vaguely see but also feel the aura. Weep's aura was easy to distinguish because he had 2 souls. The 2 auras merged together, containing both the Great Way of Space and the Great Way of Earth. This was one of the few top-tier deities in the turbulent void. Wu Howdy of the Destiny race. Lin Feng was most wary of him because he hated him the most. Although he was protected by the Destiny reincarnation and could not attack him, no one knew when the Destiny reincarnation would remove the protection. Last time, he was able to escape because the place was big. However, this place was not big at all. If they were to face each other face to face with his current strength, he was definitely not a match for him. Wu Howdy's attainment in the Tao of space was equally terrifying. He had experienced this before. Even if he were to use the Hell Fiend Cage, he would not be afraid. He could easily use the killer move of the law of space. Lu Er Mi Kong, patriarch of the 6 Air clan. Weakest aura, an ultimate high-level deity. Proficient in space and strength. The 6 Air clan was one of the top clans in the God-fallen world. They had strong physical bodies and were proficient in the Tao of space. They were very suitable for the environment of the God-fallen world. However, the clans that could reproduce had weaker bloodlines than special life forms. Among the 4 experts on the mountainside, Lu Er Mi Kong was the only high-level deity. He was not to be underestimated. The Diamond Empress, the one with the strongest aura. Lin Feng could clearly feel that the Diamond Empress's strength was very close to the peak of the deity realm. She had grown because of the heart of the diamond. She had the purest Tao of space. She was very focused. If there was no hymn mentioned by Mei Yi, the Diamond Empress would definitely have the strongest competitiveness. By the way, brother Yi, the super existence you mentioned before. Dong Wang was speaking. Suddenly, sizzle, there was a violent fluctuation in the space. A crack was torn open on the mountainside. It was as if the Eye of Destiny had opened. In an instant, an extremely powerful aura appeared. It was as if the wilderness had reappeared. Bang! He looked down at the group of small fries. His appearance made everything pale in comparison, including the 4 experts on the mountainside. He's here. Mei Yi's eyes widened with admiration, and he directly broke the dimensional space formation and passed the first path of reincarnation. The pride of the Wing clan, bastard. Lin Feng looked up. His powerful aura covered the surroundings. He did not hide his strength at all. Not only did he have great strength, but he also had great confidence. He was fearless and proud of himself. However, he did have a right to be proud because he was the only peak deity here. Moreover, he was a life form born on a wandering planet. He enjoyed the best conditions to break through reincarnation. Swoosh! Lin Feng looked straight at the sky. He could vaguely see the powerful existence. Unlike the admiration in Mei Yi's eyes, Lin Feng's eyes were filled with fighting spirit, challenge, and determination. It was not just Lin Feng. Dong Wang and Bailey Jean were the same. Although their personalities were different, Dong Wang was calm and collected, while Bailey Jean was impulsive. Their hearts were the same. The heart of the strong was fearless. Rumble, the entire space shook violently. There seemed to be echoes in the empty valley. The earth rose and fell, and a vision appeared instantly. It was activated the moment Hun-E arrived. It was as if even the path of reincarnation was waiting for his arrival. The aura was so strong that it was suffocating. It was the most majestic power of heaven and earth. Endless space fluctuated and rippled. A terrifying power came from the sky as if an invisible hand was pressing down. The endless power turned into a chaotic airflow and pressed down. The sky was covered, and everything seemed to have lost its center of gravity. Lie. Cracks began to appear on the ground as it began to collapse. The gigantic crystal peak also began to sink down along with the cracks. Bang! An invisible consciousness appeared in Lin Feng's heart. The first path of reincarnation had begun. Chapter 2176. It began abruptly, without any warning. All the anomalies were revealed the moment the super-existence, Hunchback, arrived. The invisible will not only appeared in Lin Feng's mind, but also in the minds of every expert. The ground collapsed, and below was an endless abyss. No one knew what would happen if they fell. Would they die or fail the test? Under the pressure of the majestic power, they lost their center of gravity. There was an endless force pressing down from above. An invisible and powerful palm made all the experts breathless as they fell straight down. Below, the suction force was extremely strong. Go up. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Every expert at the foot of the mountain rushed up, but the higher they went, the more terrifying the pressure was. Not only at the foot of the mountain, but also on the hillside and mountainside were undergoing the same test. Unknowingly, the first reincarnation had begun. Climbing the mountain, no one would have thought that the first test of the reincarnation of destiny would be like this. It was even more simple than the earliest dimensional array. But it was such a simple test that showed one's strength. The two Wudong brothers were unimpeded, and their strength as top-level gods was evident. Their powerful bodies were not afraid of the pressure. In a short time, they had rushed halfway up the hillside, as if there was no obstruction at all. Such a test was nothing for top-level gods. Following the top gods were the ultimate high-level gods. This was especially true for high-level gods with powerful physical bodies. They had the easiest time in this test. For example, Ho Xiang, the lion head expert, blood-maned beast king, and Qiao did not show any special effort. In addition to Lin Feng and the other two middle-level gods who were lagging behind, there were two other middle-level gods. This test is not difficult. Although Lin Feng was lagging behind, he was not in a hurry because he could summon his doppelganger, Ku Dun, and then put away his true body. With Ku Dun's defense, although only at the threshold of a high-level god, it was strong enough to take the test head-on. Roughly speaking, all high-level gods should be able to pass this test. Although the power of heaven was strong, those who could enter here were not ordinary people. Even the middle-level gods had their own strengths. Was the first test so simple? Smack! Lin Feng frowned and shouted, "Patriarch, Brother Bai Li, be careful." As soon as his voice fell, there was a loud bang in the sky. Huge bolts of lightning that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly struck down, hitting every expert. Dong Wang and Bailey Jean, who had just been awakened by Lin Feng's shout, reacted quickly and dodged. However, the other two mid-level divine spirits were not so lucky. One of them reacted quickly and had time to activate his defense to resist the attack, while the other was struck by the lightning. He screamed and fell to the foot of the mountain. That place had already been devoured by the endless abyss. His shrill cry reverberated in the air. A terrifying suction force came from below, and the mid-level deity's aura was instantly annihilated. He wasn't the only one who was struck. Many high-level gods above him were also struck. He was lucky enough to block it, and only used up a bit of energy. However, his current position was even lower than Lin Feng and the others because the impact was too great. Due to his bad luck, he was severely injured, leaving his body charred on the outside and tender on the inside. It was a tragic sight to behold. However, As he was a high-tier god, his physical body was resilient, so he did not suffer any fatal injuries. Of the 13 gods at the foot of the mountain, only 12 were left. Dong Wang and Bailey Jin's faces were pale, especially Bailey Jin, who was hot-headed. If it weren't for Lin Feng's shout, he would probably end up no different from the mid-level deity. As for Dong Wang, he had been cautious, but when the real lightning struck, he was not sure if he could dodge it. After all, his strength was the weakest, and he was the only low-level deity. Although he had improved over the past thousands of years, he was only at the limit of the low level, and there was still a certain distance between him and a mid-level deity. One's strength was one's advantage. This was not only reflected in the alternate dimensional space array before the beginning, but also here. Every bolt of lightning was equal. If it struck a mid-level deity, it would almost be fatal. If it struck a high-level deity, it would cause serious injuries. But if it struck a top-level deity, it was easily blocked. The two Wudong brothers took the two lightning strikes head-on, and they only retreated a few steps. Even Meng Xiang, an ultimate high-level deity with a strong physical defense, took the blow head-on and was unscathed. The gap was obvious here. The 13 deities at the foot of the mountain were separated. Lin Feng and the other two had improved a little from the bottom. At least they were no longer at the bottom. But it was only temporary. With their strength, it was only a matter of time before other high-level deities caught up with them. It seems that this is all there is to the first reincarnation test, Lin Feng estimated. The first test was neither too difficult nor too easy. Including himself, there were a total of 25 deities. Among them, 8 were top-level deities, 1 was peak-level deity, and the remaining 16 were below top-level deities. Taking into account the 18 meteorite vortexes, there were 2 less. One of them had been eliminated just now. The other one was probably eliminated in the alternate dimensional space array. Of course, there would be more than one lightning strike, but he did not know if there was a pattern to it. But even if there was no pattern, it would not affect him. With his reaction and speed, it was not difficult to dodge. But it would be difficult for some high-level deities, because the higher up the mountain, the less time it took for the lightning strike to strike. He could dodge it now, but he might not be able to dodge it later. He could defend himself now, but he might not be able to block it later when he got more and more injured and his energy was depleted. One should know that. This crystal peak was constantly descending. The suction force from below was stronger than the previous one, and the suction force was amazing. Patriarch, go below the Wutong brothers. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat, and he shouted repeatedly. Dong Wang suddenly understood when he heard that. He moved horizontally and disappeared in an instant. Compared to climbing the mountain, moving horizontally was much easier. Bailey Jin was slightly startled, but he also understood. His shifty eyes swept around, and he was very cunning as he moved directly towards Meng Xiang. Lin Feng could not help laughing. Hiding below these deities who could withstand the lightning strikes, although he still had to bear the lightning strikes, the pressure from above would at least be much less. With less pressure, his dodging speed would naturally be faster. Sometimes the difference was often just a little. As for himself, Lin Feng did not want to take advantage of it. This was not difficult for him, so there was no need to waste his energy. Bolts of lightning struck down one after another, but Lin Feng was able to easily dodge them without even using the 5 transformations overlapping shadows. As for the bursts of pressure coming from above, Lin Feng's physical strength was now comparable to that of a high-level deity, so he did not care. After passing the hillside, he soon saw the previous mountainside. Soon, Lin Feng could vaguely see the end point from here. In the beginning, it was where the super existence asshole was. Chapter 2177. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder and lightning intertwined, and the power was overwhelming. One by one, the experts continued to climb. Not only the experts on the hillside and mountainside, but even Han Yu, who was already at the end of the first reincarnation, continued to climb. His destination was naturally different from the experts at the foot of the mountain. The summit, the place where the thunder and lightning struck, was the place where the pressure was the strongest. But Han Yu didn't care. He allowed the thunder and lightning to strike his body, but there was no wound at all. It couldn't break through his defense at all. For him, the first and even the second test were easy to pass. I, Hunyu, will rule the world. Hunyu stood proudly on the crystal peak, full of ambition. Boom! The second mid-level god expert fell. As the crystal peak became shorter and shorter, the lightning strikes became faster and faster. He, who was already injured, could no longer continue and fell into the abyss. There was no sympathy. All the experts were fighting with their lives on the line. It was only the first reincarnation, but many high-level god experts already felt heavy pressure. This included Mei Yi, who got along well with Lin Feng and the other two. Mei Yi's physical defense wasn't strong, but he was smart. Seeing Dong Wang and Bailey Jean like this, he also chose to follow behind the Bloodmane Beast King and Tira, saving a lot of energy. He passed through the hillside and mountainside until he reached the end. Clang, something seemed to ring in his heart. It was a feeling of peace and security, as if there was a dividing line between them. Mei Yi instantly knew that he had passed the first test. Looking up, the Bloodmane Beast King and Tira were still climbing. Mei Yi hesitated and stopped. If he went any higher, he wouldn't be able to avoid the lightning strikes, even if the Bloodmane Beast King and Tira weakened the pressure for him. He had to pass the first reincarnation first. Many people had the same idea as Mei Yi. Dong Wang was panting and exhausted a lot of energy. To him, reaching the end of the first reincarnation was already his limit. He couldn't continue climbing like Bailey Jean. Seventh brother. Dong Wang looked over. Lin Feng was not far below him. However, he didn't resort to trickery like he did. Instead, he climbed the mountain alone. Every time lightning struck, seventh brother Lin Feng would easily dodge it. There was no expression of burden on his face. His nimbleness made people wonder if this was really a reincarnation trial. Seventh brother, you're much more powerful than me now. Dong Wang sighed, but there was no jealousy. He was happy and gratified from the bottom of his heart. Whoosh! When Lin Feng reached the end of the line, a thought appeared in his mind. It was as if the danger had been averted, and he immediately understood. Sweeping his gaze across the crowd, he turned to clan head Dong Wang and asked, "Clan head, why did you stop? I'm almost to my limit." Dong Wang, the patriarch, smiled and said, "Go ahead, don't worry about me." Lin Feng nodded. Now is not the time to be bashful. Most of the experts continued to move forward until they reached their limits. Lin Feng looked down. His climbing speed was not fast, but because he had not suffered a single lightning strike, he had never fallen. Therefore, his position was relatively close to the front. In fact, it was even higher than the position of an expert who was originally on the slope. If he could go up, there was no reason for him to stop. The dimensional space matrix was a very obvious example. His current position was probably the beginning of the second reincarnation. Although he did not know what the second reincarnation was, the higher he stood, the better it was. See you in the third reincarnation. Lin Feng smiled and bade farewell to the patriarch. Then, he continued to climb. Clan head Dong Wang could not help but laugh. He looked up slightly, and there was a hint of sadness in his smile. The third reincarnation. I wonder if I can see it. He continued to climb. Lin Feng's position was getting closer and closer to the front. From the end, he had risen little by little. Now, he had caught up with many high-level gods who were originally at the foot of the mountain because the higher he went, the more difficult it was to go up. The closer he was to the lightning strike, the harder it was to avoid it. He could only rely on brute force. How many strikes could he withstand? Therefore, when they reached the limit, many high-level gods chose to wait in place instead of climbing up. At this time, the pressure above would disappear, and so would the lightning strike. They would fall into a state of complete tranquility, unable to continue climbing, but there would be no danger. At this time, Lin Feng was close to the middle, and the first reincarnation was about to end. Go again. As long as he could avoid the lightning strike, Lin Feng did not plan to stop. However, the pressure above him was so strong that his body was gradually unable to bear it. Lin Feng did not want to expose his doppelganger, Ku Dun, so he gradually slowed down. However, among the 22 remaining experts, he was now in the middle. Thud! Lin Feng stopped. It was not that he wanted to stop, but the first reincarnation had ended. There are 13 auras above, so I'm now in the 14th place. Lin Feng was quite satisfied. He had caught up with many of them. Those who were ahead of him were only the peak god, Hun Kong, 8 top-level gods, and 4 ultimate high-level gods, Yin Fa Jia, Li Xiang, Lu Er Kong, and Lei Mozi. Even Blood-Maned, Beast King, Tila, the expert with the lion head, and several ultimate high-level gods who were originally on the mountain slope were behind him. However, their positions were not far away, so he could see clearly at a glance. The gap had not widened. 4 eliminated. Lin Feng sensed the auras below and quickly counted the number. There were 22 experts left. The first reincarnation was not strong, but it was not weak either. It could only be considered average, so it was reasonable for 4 to be eliminated. However, according to Mei Yi, the first 3 reincarnations of the 6 paths of reincarnation were relatively easy. The last 3 reincarnations were the real test. As long as it's not a test of the path of space, it's fine. Lin Feng did not ask for much. He could find a way to deal with the other reincarnation tests. However, if it was a test of the law of space or the path of space, he might not be able to do anything. Rest. Most of the experts chose the same method. Even if they were not injured, they would recover their strength and energy to prepare for the second reincarnation test. Lin Feng was one of the few who had not exhausted his strength and energy. However, since he had time to rest, he would not waste it. It was good to cultivate for a while. Every minute counted. Increase his strength. The space energy here is too strong. Lin Feng felt the excitement of the black vortex. It was spinning rapidly and absorbing the energy crazily. The 4th stage black vortex was now at the same level as the bloodline of the divine vein of light and the demonic vein of darkness. He had plenty of time to recuperate. 100 years. Obviously, the reincarnation of destiny also hoped that every expert could face the challenge in their best condition. After all, the selection was for the real king, the master of the wandering planet. Thump, thump, thump. His heartbeat sped up, and a vision appeared. Lin Feng opened his eyes. At this time, every expert was also filled with fighting spirit. They all felt the fluctuation in their minds. The second reincarnation of the 6 paths of reincarnation set by the supreme law of the wandering planet. It was about to begin. Chapter 2178. Whoosh, holy light shone, and the dark clouds scattered. The entire sky seemed to have been reborn. The sky cleared up after the rain, and the sunlight shone on the perfect crystals. The patterns on top of the crystals glowed, and the secret patterns on the entire crystal peak connected together, emitting a resplendent light that shrouded the entire area. What a powerful spatial energy! Lin Feng could feel that every crystal on the crystal peak was brimming with energy and was indestructible. All the crystals were connected together, forming a stable and perfect whole. Layer after layer, they formed the main network of the crystal peak. In an instant, the crystal peak seemed to have come alive, but it didn't give him a good feeling. This doesn't look good, Lin Feng muttered to himself. His intuition told him that it would be very difficult. The second reincarnation had begun. Pa, pa, pa. The crystals moved aside one by one. In front of every expert on the crystal peak, a crystal carved with patterns opened. It was like a door opening, allowing people to enter. Lin Feng was slightly startled. He looked around and saw that all the experts seemed to have the same doubts. Instantly, a thought flashed through his mind. The second reincarnation was clear. You're letting me in? Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief. Different situations call for different measures, and he stepped inside. Whoosh! There was a universe inside, and the space was bright. The light of the crystals filled the entire space. It was beautiful. Lin Feng stepped in and looked around. This was a space filled with countless honeycomb crystals. The crystals were connected together. Counting them carefully, there were 6 of them. The 6 honeycomb crystals had an irregular shape. They looked like round balls, but they also looked like sharp cones. The engravings on them formed patterns. In front of the honeycomb crystals, there was a huge green stone slab that had an ancient luster. Copying a spatial secret technique. The thought in his mind made Lin Feng smile bitterly. The so-called spatial secret techniques were essentially spatial laws. This was the same as the laws of heaven and earth. For example, the 100,000 origin secret techniques that he was using, such as double light speed and 5 transformations overlapping shadows, were essentially the great Tao of light. But the problem was that he only knew the spatial tearing law, and he had only comprehended a little bit of it. It was just enough for him to enter the 9-star level. Previously, it was still because of great Brahma that he could barely comprehend it. In order to become a deity, one had to fulfill one of the 3 conditions in the law of space. His comprehension of the advanced space laws had reached perfection. His comprehension of the extremely advanced space laws was perfect. His comprehension of the top-notch space law had reached large success. Although he had some understanding of the top-notch space law, the spatial tearing, the difference between comprehending a tiny bit and mastering it was as vast as thousands of miles. They were on completely different levels. The secret art of space was built on the foundation of the Great Circle. It's over. Lin Feng clearly knew that although he had passed the first cycle, the second cycle had hit his weak spot, the Tao of space. Moreover, it was likely that he would not be able to pass this stage if he merely comprehended the high-level space laws. Ordinary divine spirit realm experts had reached great perfection in their comprehension of the high-level law of space. She was a novice god, and she had perfected the law of space. He was a mid-level god with a top-notch perfected space law. As for the high-level god, he had probably advanced to a higher level on the foundation of the perfected space law. Based on the requirements of the Great Reincarnation, it would not be easy for high-level god to pass the second cycle. In other words, even a top-notch great perfection in the law of space would be far from enough. Lin Feng sighed. His realm was a little too far from it. It was like the difference between a saber master and an apprentice who had just learned how to use the saber. Looking at these secret space runes was like looking at a heavenly book. He could not understand them at all. There was no record of the Tao of space in the Thousand Heaven Path. The inheritance of his ancestors was all about the Tao of light and darkness. Right now, he was really isolated and helpless. I was lucky enough to pass the dimensional space formation by relying on the black whirlpool. But here, Lin Feng stared at the secret space runes and sighed softly. Obviously, this was not something that could be passed by luck. If one could not comprehend these secret space runes, it would be impossible to carve anything on the bluestone slabs in front of him. Copying could not be all form and no spirit. How could the second reincarnation be so simple? Although the space energy here is strong, it is too late to make a last-minute effort. Lin Feng shook his head. Step by step, he comprehended the law of space. From a trace to a threshold, then to a small success, then to a great success, and finally to the great perfection. So what? Even so, his attainment in the law of space was only barely comparable to a mid-level god. Could a mid-level god pass the second reincarnation? Moreover, if he cultivated step by step, it would be too late. Why don't I smash it? Lin Feng thought about it and gave up. He was still protected by the mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven could protect him, but it could also destroy him. Challenging the mandate of heaven would not end well. Let's give it a try. Lin Feng had no other choice but to bite the bullet. He sat down cross-legged and forced himself to focus. He stared at the secret runes of the 6 honeycomb crystals and immersed himself in it. Year after year, Lin Feng's forehead was sweating. It was very strenuous. The more he looked, the more tired he was. Not only did he not gain anything, but he also ended up in a sorry state. This won't do. The difference in level is too big. Lin Feng closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and adjusted his state. Right now, he was like an apprentice peeping at the world's best treasure book. He had no foundation at all, no mental cultivation method, nothing. He only relied on his hot-bloodedness. Not only would he not be able to learn anything, he would even go crazy. Of course, with his current strength, it was impossible for the energy to backfire on him just by looking and comprehending. But it was enough to damage his spirit and make him tired. There is no other way. I can only come up with a plan and let my clone try. Lin Feng immediately transformed. clone Kudun appeared. The crystal space was quite big, and the body of the giant rhinoceros could easily accommodate it. As a high-level god, clone Kudun's attainment in the law of space was not bad, but his comprehension was not enough, so his attainment in the law of space was limited. Moreover, his strength was only at the threshold of a high-level god. He was slightly better than the main body, but not by much. Year after year, he could only comprehend a little. He could not grasp the key points at all. When there was a slight mark on the blue stone, it was already a failure. There was no other way. Lin Feng felt like his head was about to explode, and he almost gave up on himself. The first reincarnation was carefree, but the second reincarnation took a big tumble. He spent a total of 6 years, but he did not gain anything. At this time, the experts who were originally below him had surpassed him one by one. Although he could not see, he could clearly sense the location of the aura. Am I going to die here? Lin Feng was unwilling. Chapter 2179. He was very unwilling. However, Lin Feng could clearly see that he seemed to have reached his limit. After years of cultivation, he clearly knew that nothing could be achieved overnight, especially space and time, which were heaven-rank laws. They were much more difficult than elemental laws. How could it be easy to peek into the heavenly axiom? Even for elemental laws, it was difficult to achieve perfection, let alone heaven-rank laws. However, with my current cultivation, it should be easy for me to achieve perfection in elemental laws. Lin Feng smiled. After all, his life rating was already a high-level God-rank powerhouse. Forget it. When it's time to give up, I'll give up. I can only think of another way in the Milky Way. When I go back, I'll see if Shua can make an exception. With my current strength, I might have a chance. Lin Feng nodded gently. Failing to break through the reincarnation cycle did not mean death. Lin Feng was not wishy-washy. Instead of continuing to waste time, it was better to make good use of the remaining time. At least it would not be a wasted trip. The space energy here is much richer than the turbulent space zone. No wonder it's the core of a wandering planet. Comprehending space law here is the best. My black vortex is now at the 4th stage. My aptitude is not weak. I could try to improve my space law realm. Although I can't reach the Grandmaster level, I have to at least be familiar with it. I can't always stay at the apprentice level. Lin Feng's heart was calm. He let go of his worries. In fact, the situation was not that bad. His life rating was very close to that of a god, but his space law realm was still far away. It would be pointless to be stuck at this juncture. After leaving the turbulent void, it would be too difficult to find other areas with rich space energy. It was better to use the time here to improve his space law realm to the level needed for a breakthrough in life rating. High-level space law? Perfect. I don't have any high-level space law that I'm good at. Instead of recomprehending it, it's better to continue comprehending the top-level space law, laceration. At least I have the foundation, and with the great Brahma treasure, it'll be twice the result with half the effort. His comprehension of the high-level space laws had reached perfection. Top-level space law? Perfect. The difficulty would vary from person to person. Therefore, it did not matter how one chose. It all depended on one's preference. At the very least, the upper limit of laceration, a top-notch spatial law, is higher. Lin Feng liked to challenge the difficulty. He let out a light sigh, eliminated all other thoughts, and began to cultivate. The black vortex greedily absorbed the spatial energy. Lin Feng calmed himself down and focused his mind. With a high life form and talent, his cultivation speed was naturally fast. Even the top space laws did not cause too much trouble for Lin Feng. In less than 10 years, he had already reached the threshold of the top space laws, laceration. In the 21st year, he achieved the small accomplishment. In the 45th year, he entered the great accomplishment realm. It's very easy. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. He didn't feel that there was any difficulty or shackles. The progress was faster than expected. Lin Feng stood up and looked at the 6 honeycomb crystals in front of him. He looked at them again and again, then shook his head and sat down again. Sure enough, although the law of space has reached the standard of a god, it is only the standard of an ordinary god. The difference was still too great. However, compared to when he was completely clueless, he could at least see the difference now. Incomparably huge. Continue. Lin Feng did not waste any time and continued to cultivate. The top space laws, laceration, had reached perfection. There was no limit to breaking through to the god level. It was undoubtedly a stimulant. It also proved that his spatial talent was actually not bad. It was just that the timing was not right. The cultivation time was too short. Seventh brother? Dong Wang, who had broken through another level, was slightly surprised. He felt that Lin Feng was on the same level as him. However, this level was where his seventh brother Lin Feng had been standing before. After 50 years, his seventh brother was still at the same level? This is troublesome. Although seventh brother's combat power is strong, he has only cultivated for a short time and is not good at the path of space. Dong Wang let out a long sigh and closed his eyes. It was a deep pity. He knew very well that his seventh brother Lin Feng's talent and ability were far above his. However, 50 years had passed, and he was still stagnant. The hope of passing the second reincarnation was slim. I still have hope. Dong Wang's eyes were like torches as he stared at the 6 honeycomb crystals in front of him. He had truly climbed up from the bottom. From 3 honeycomb crystals to 4, then 5, then 6. He gradually improved, and his comprehension of the space laws increased day by day. However, until now, he still did not have any confidence because he did not know when it would end, nor did he know how far the path was. How difficult would it be to copy the space mystic technique next? Above Lin Feng, Bailey Jean was sharpening his head and walking up. His comprehension was quite outstanding. He also walked the path of fire in space, but he was better at using fire. However, his ability in the path of space was not bad. In addition, he had used a trick in the first reincarnation and walked up a lot. His current position was much higher than Dong Wang's. The comprehension of the Origin Awakened Continent's experts was above that of the God-Fallen World's experts. I must pass. I can't fail in the second reincarnation. I must be able to comprehend it. Bailey Jin's eyes burned with flames. He was full of fighting spirit. He had the same ambition. At the very top, just a few feet away from the top, was the Empress of Crystal Diamonds. She had a pale complexion, and her entire body seemed to be made of transparent diamonds. She was currently drawing complex secret runes on the bluestone slab. In front of her were 9 honeycombs that were connected by secret runes. They contained the ultimate Tao of space. One stroke, another stroke. The Crystal Empress let out a soft cry, as if she was happy. At this time, the mystic patterns on the bluestone slab were basically completed. Only the last stroke was left. Ding, a pleasant sound rang out. The mystic patterns on the bluestone slab were like the finishing touch. They were perfect. The bright light and the mystic patterns of the honeycombs reflected each other, emitting an extremely beautiful light. Vigorous space energy appeared and enveloped the Crystal Empress, enveloping her flawless body and merging into it. Suddenly, she disappeared without a trace. Simple. A mere space mystic technique is nothing more than this. Almost at the same time, the king of the Destiny race, Wu Howdy, also waved his fingers. His eyes shone brightly, and the eye of destiny between his brows flashed with transparent colors. Stroke after stroke of the mystic patterns landed on the bluestone slab. He was already more than halfway done. Those who entered here were all overflowing geniuses. Right now, there were countless experts who were copying the 8 honeycombs. Lu Er Mi Kong, Ti Ku, and Huang Dai Huang. These experts who had performed outstandingly in the alternate dimensional space array also performed very well in the second reincarnation. With the current progress, passing the second reincarnation was only a matter of time. And at this level, there was only one expert from the Origin Awakened Continent, Yin Fagia. Chapter 2180. The second reincarnation test took 100 years. Many experts with outstanding spatial talent had already completed it and left after reaching the peak. There were also many who were still working hard and making great progress. The most outstanding one was Dong Wang. He barely passed the first reincarnation test as a novice deity. However, with his outstanding spatial talent, He stood out in the second reincarnation. His strength increased in the 88th year, causing his life level to reach mid-level deity level. His spatial comprehension speed increased again, and he had already begun to copy the 7 honeycomb crystals spatial secret technique. Bailey Jean, who had the upper hand in the early stages, was still trapped in the 8 honeycomb crystals layer. Similarly trapped at this level were the 2 Wudong brothers and other top masters, as well as many ultimate high-level gods who did not perform well in the dimensional space formation. Their comprehension was not as good as the experts of the Origin Awakened continent. As for Lin Feng, although he was no longer in the same place, it was as if a group of experts had already begun to cultivate peerless sword techniques, while Lin Feng had just started to learn basic sword techniques. His progress was very slow, but in fact, for Lin Feng, it was already very fast. In the outside world, this speed of advancement was enough to make people gasp in amazement. No matter how outstanding an expert spatial talent was, it was impossible to improve a top-level spatial law from a trace realm to a greater mastery realm in 100 years. Needless to say, Lin Feng was not far from the perfect realm. Even in a top-grade cultivation place like the Crystal Peak, it was enough to prove that Lin Feng's spatial talent was actually quite outstanding. In terms of the difficulty of the laws, top level was already the highest. It's about time. Lin Feng was focused. His comprehension of the top-level spatial law, laceration, had already entered the final stage. In at most 20 years, I will be able to fully comprehend laceration. Majestic spatial energy circled around, and the black vortex was extremely excited. It was like a third brother under the wings of his 2 elder brothers. It was the youngest and the most inconspicuous. It had always been covered by the dazzling light of his 2 elder brothers, and it was only now that it truly began to show its talent. In the 114th year, he comprehended the top-level spatial law, laceration, to perfection. In the 263rd year, the apex spatial law, laceration, was comprehended to great perfection. Hua! The ultimate spatial source descended, bathing Lin Feng's body. It emitted a resplendent light, nourishing Lin Feng. This was a gift from the heavens. His life force had clearly taken a huge step forward. To the current him, it was undoubtedly a sweet nectar. Finally, my mastery of the Tao of space has reached the average level. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. Just like his current combat power, he had reached the standard of a mid-level god. However, he was still far from the standard of a high-level deity, let alone a top-level deity. This was especially true for the top-level deities here, as many of them were proficient in the path of space. In the end, it's not my forte. An inch long, an inch short. Lin Feng knew very well that the reason he cultivated and comprehended the space Tao was mostly because of the need to improve his life level. However, as his cultivation in the spatial Tao improved, it allowed him to come into contact with many things that he was unable to comprehend in the past. For example, heavenly Tao. There seems to be a qualitative difference between the heavenly Tao and the great Tao. In terms of combat power, the fusion of the great Tao can completely overshadow the heavenly Tao. However, there are some fundamental things that can't be comprehended by the great Tao. It's like a blind spot. If you don't cultivate, you'll never be able to perceive that corner of things. Lin Feng had some vague ideas, but he couldn't put them into words. He knew that his cultivation wasn't high enough, and he didn't have enough experience. However, this might be the reason why his ancestor had cultivated the path of light and darkness to the limit of the heavenly Tao, but had never been able to take that crucial step and break through the heavenly Tao. To break through the heavenly Tao, one must know the heavenly Tao. Or perhaps his ancestor knew, but didn't want to do so. Too far away. Lin Feng shook his head and smiled. At present, he was still far from the limit of the heavenly Tao. There was no need to talk about breaking through the heavenly Tao. The right path was to cultivate peacefully. Speaking of which, it's been 263 years, and the second reincarnation trial still hasn't ended. How long has it been? Lin Feng was very curious. Although he could vaguely feel that it was about to end, this soon had a very large range of fluctuations. A few years could be considered fast. A few decades could also be considered fast. Well, although there isn't enough time, I'll try to copy this spatial secret technique again. Perhaps I'll be able to comprehend something and gain something. There's no harm in doing it. If he passed the reincarnation trial, there would be no such thing. He had to make good use of it. Indeed, it was impossible for him to pass the second trial, but it wasn't bad to be able to learn something useful from it. For example, his attainments in space had greatly improved. It seems that I can understand some of it. Lin Feng stared at the spatial patterns for a while and nodded slightly. Compared to when he had just entered, his current realm had greatly improved. He was no longer the ignorant person he used to be. So this is the composition of the spatial secret technique. Lin Feng's finger drew in the air, imitating the secret patterns of the honeycomb crystal, and nodded thoughtfully. Pa! The spatial energy was abundant, and Lin Feng could easily draw in the void. The active spatial elements constantly interpreted the spatial patterns on the 6 honeycomb crystals in front of him. Lin Feng drew stroke by stroke, and soon he was immersed in it and entered a state of deep comprehension. The difficulty of the second reincarnation trial was originally gradual. The difference between the difficulty of 6 honeycomb crystals and 9 honeycomb crystals was more than 10,000 miles. With Lin Feng's current attainments in space as a mid-level god, it was no problem for him to comprehend the spatial secret technique of 6 honeycomb crystals, but it would take time. Although he didn't need to comprehend the secret technique, he had to know the secret technique before he could copy it. It was like a spaceship. You didn't need to know how to build it, but you had to understand its structure, composition, and the purpose of each component to truly control and use it. In the blink of an eye, 10 years flew by. I understand now. Lin Feng woke up from his epiphany and smiled. He tapped his finger lightly and drew directly on the blue stone in front of him. A clear power touched the blue stone, and a secret pattern appeared on it. It was exactly the same as the one on the honeycomb crystals, and spatial elemental energy jumped. Swish, 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 Lin Feng continued to draw, but on the third stroke he paused slightly. Instantly, the light of the spatial secret pattern dimmed and disappeared in an instant. Failure. It's still a little difficult. Lin Feng smiled. In other words, he had comprehended 2 honeycomb crystals, which was about the same as he expected. He had made progress. It was already good that he had comprehended 1/3 of the secret technique in 10 years. I'll be able to comprehend it in about 30 to 50 years. Lin Feng smiled as he looked at the 6 honeycomb crystals in front of him. He just didn't know if he had time. Chapter 2181. Lin Feng heaved a sigh of relief, adjusted his mood, and looked at the honeycomb crystal again. Just as he was about to continue comprehending, he suddenly frowned slightly. Lin Feng carefully stared at the mysterious patterns and their connections. The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter, and his heartbeat sped up slightly. All of a sudden, he had a very special feeling. This is 100,000 origins. The great Tao of light and the great Tao of darkness both have 100,000 origins. Every point is an origin, and all secret techniques are made up of origin points. The same goes for the laws of space. It's very difficult to comprehend this secret technique alone, but I don't really need to comprehend it right now. Lin Feng's attainments in the laws of space had improved a lot. Before, it was like reading a heavenly book, but now he could at least understand the secret technique. This was very important. If he couldn't even understand it, then he naturally couldn't talk about anything else. If the second reincarnation required him to comprehend this secret technique, then he had to comprehend it firmly. However, the requirement was only to copy, not comprehend. Although the two were very similar, and he could naturally copy after comprehending it, but there was more than one way to copy. In fact, copying a space secret art was much easier than completely comprehending it. Copying was equivalent to understanding it, not requiring one to know how to use it. In terms of space secret arts, it was fine as long as one understood it. There was no need to know how to use it. If one really knew how to use this secret technique, even 10 times the time was far from enough. Since that was the case, Why did he have to comprehend it? It might be possible to use the 100,000 essences method to copy this spatial arcane magic. Lin Feng's heart was moved. He stared at the 6 honeycomb crystals in front of him. In an instant, they were broken down before his eyes. Each pattern was broken down into countless origin points, arranged in a unique way. Other high-level gods couldn't do it because their 100,000 origin points weren't cultivated by themselves, but were bestowed by the heavens. But Lin Feng was different. He had completely cultivated each 100,000 origins, especially the analysis of the 100,000 origin points. It could be said that in terms of 100,000 origins, none of the experts participating in the reincarnation, including Han Sheng, could compare to Lin Feng. With enough experience, Lin Feng was full of confidence. If he could draw the 100,000 source points secret technique of the light and darkness Tao, why couldn't he draw the space Tao secret technique? The difference was that he understood the structure of the 100,000 source origin points of the light and darkness path secret technique. If he studied it carefully, he could comprehend its mysteries. However, he could only copy the space path secret technique. He couldn't comprehend any of its mysteries and could easily fail. But so what? Here, it didn't matter if one failed 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. As long as there was enough space energy, one could try again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng acted quickly. As he followed the honeycomb crystal step by step, his comprehension was basically zero. However, as long as he could see the 100,000 origin points and their composition, he could attempt to sketch and memorize them. Failure, failure, and failure again. In the first year, Lin Feng didn't even manage to copy a single honeycomb crystal, but he didn't back down. Only with failure would there be progress. Sure enough, after gaining experience in the second year, his success rate and speed increased a lot. It wasn't until the third year that he finally succeeded in copying the engravings on the honeycomb crystal. That's it. Lin Feng looked at the gradually disappearing carvings on the blue stone and smiled with satisfaction. This was a milestone. If he could draw the first honeycomb crystal, he could naturally draw the second, third, and fourth. No matter how many honeycomb crystals there were, they were all the same. The essence of their composition was the composition of the origin points. However, he didn't need to think about this. What he needed to do was to draw every single honeycomb crystal. It didn't matter what the composition was. In any case, he didn't plan to comprehend it and couldn't comprehend it. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Lin Feng's drawing speed became faster and faster. From not being able to draw a single honeycomb crystal in a year, to now, he didn't need a year to easily copy the space engravings of a honeycomb crystal. The 283rd year. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Lin Feng lifted his finger and waved it rapidly. The runic patterns on the blue stone slab flashed with clear spatial elements. It was like a dragon soaring in the sky, growing bit by bit until it was complete. Every origin point was filled with vitality, and every fine line was filled with power. Combined together, they contained endless mysteries. Where the heavenly Tao was, Lin Feng's heart palpitated, and he felt like he was suffocating. Ha! After finishing the last drawing, Lin Feng stared at the blue stone without blinking. At this moment, abundant space energy gathered. The engravings on the blue stone were exactly the same as the ones on the honeycomb crystal. It contained a mysterious and powerful space energy. Although he could only understand a little, it didn't stop him from drawing the entire engravings. Wah! The space secret technique on the blue stone seemed to have come alive. Lin Feng's face bloomed with a satisfied smile because he knew what it meant. Finally, I didn't come here in vain. Lin Feng nodded. The space secret technique flashed and released a pure energy, instantly wrapping Lin Feng. The space changed, and the stars in front of him turned, and he appeared in another world. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. His position was one level higher than before, and the space energy increased slightly. The honeycomb crystal reappeared, but it changed from 6 crystals to 7. The space engravings also changed completely. It's much harder. Lin Feng stared at the 7 honeycomb crystals in front of him. Although there was only one more, the difficulty had increased by several times, and the space engravings were much more complicated. But it didn't matter. To him, the only difference was that there was one more honeycomb crystal and the engravings on it were a little bit more. Everything else was exactly the same. My copying speed should be much faster now. Lin Feng was confident. Everything he did, he would gradually become familiar with it. Without any obstacles, Lin Feng only spent 6 years to complete the drawing of the 7 honeycomb crystals, and the space secret technique was completely displayed. But compared to the previous level, he didn't understand the space secret technique at all. But it didn't matter if he understood it or not. 8 honeycomb crystals. Oh, Lin Feng could already sense that there were quite a number of experts trapped in this place. His mind told him that he was incomparably close to the second reincarnation, and there were clearly more experts above him. In other words, this wasn't the end. Looks like they're going to be eliminated like me. Lin Feng sighed in his heart. Even though the lion-headed expert and the 7-tailed demon possessed formidable combat strength, they lacked spatial talent and comprehension ability, causing their path of reincarnation to come to an end. Fortunately, the clan leader and Bailey Jean weren't on this level. Although I can't pass, I hope you can go further. Lin Feng smiled.